is it going to be on your page?
Yes, it'll be on my page.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're
Perfect.
live.
Oh,
I think we're
awesome.
live.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to switch to the single view. Let's do that right quick. Let's do that. Okay. Can everyone see me? And okay, perfect. So I appreciate all of you who are tuning in to this episode 2 of Necessary Conversations, because indeed this is a necessary conversation. I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted. There's been so much that has been happening in the world, so much that has been happening on my Facebook timeline, and I believe that in this point, in this moment of heightened emotionalism, I believe that we need to come together to think through some solutions for us as a people collectively. I know that people are angry. I know that people are passionate. I know that people are experiencing the full gamut of emotions. But I think right now that we need to come together to have some necessary conversations with one another, and not only with one another within our particular race group, but also with those that are across the aisle, because I want to hear from those that are not necessarily within our community, how they can contribute to move this cause forward. There is so much happening in the world, not just with the George Floyd situation, but there are, in the past 2 weeks, there have been countless incidents with racist undertones. I mean, it has just baffled me some of the things that have happened. I can list some of the events. We had a youth pastor who claimed he was kidnapped by black men to avoid admitting why he was in the hotel room. So, I mean, he tried to scapegoat 2 black men because he did not want to reveal the real reality of why he was in the hotel room, which is, of course, was an untoward reason. We also have a Florida mother who said 2 black men abducted her autistic son and actually drowned the boy in a canal. You know, we had Amy Cooper, which we're going to discuss later, who was a video of a white woman calling the cops on a black man in Central Park, which drew outrage across the world. And of course, we had Breonna Taylor, we had Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd. And so my thing is, these incidents continue to manifest. They continue to manifest. And we have to, as a people, come together to understand how can we think through this moment to put forward an agenda to move us forward as a people collectively, so that we can have our voice heard and so that we can, in some way, to the best of our ability, extinguish these atrocities that continue to manifest. And so before we hop into the subject matter at hand, I have assembled an incredible team of thinkers. I am not an expert on this issue. I'm not an expert on all things related to race relations, but I have assembled a team who's very vocal, very established in their own right, very opinionated people who have great contributions to this conversation. And so before we dive into the subject matter, I'm going to tell everyone that is watching, I want you to share this broadcast. This is going to be a very in-depth conversation. We're going to get into some very nitty-gritty and real issues. And so I want you to share this, press that share button to everyone that is watching right now. I want you to comment your life away, post your opinions, post what you think, post your viewpoint, because we don't have all the answers. I think everybody can contribute to this very critical moment that we're experiencing in America and across the world, okay? So post your comments, share this broadcast, and let's begin talking through this. So I'm going to share this distinguished panel that I've assembled, and I am so honored that all of these people have come on to begin talking through these issues. I'm going to first share, we're going to start with the fragrance in the room. She is such a wonderful individual. I've known her in music. She is just well established in terms of the music industry and performing all across this world. And so, Sophia, can you just greet the people for a minute?
Hello, everyone. Hi. First of all, Aaron, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so
Yes.
happy that you said everybody's opinion matters and you want, because this is affecting everybody. Even
Yes.
those people who are not fully in politics, it's still affecting your life. And so this is a time for us to really begin to have these conversations and start to move in a different direction. But anyway, I'm
Yes.
so honored to be here, the only woman.
Yeah, haha.
So I'm going to
Come on
stand
here.
strong for all of us. Thank you.
And we appreciate you, Sophia. Thank you so much. I've been watching your Facebook post, and it's been incredible how you've just taken a stand. And I believe right now that's exactly what we all need to be doing, in some way, taking a stand and making our position known. So I appreciate you, Sophia. Thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you.
The next person we have is an attorney, y'all. He is, listen, his reputation precedes him. He is such an incredible individual, well established, has been fighting for so much of our rights and helping to move us forward collectively as a people. And so Quinon Brooker, let me tell y'all something. As soon as he starts to talk, you're going to understand why he's on this panel. And so Quinon Brooker, can you just greet the people?
I can, and Aaron, thank you. My name is Quinon Brooker. I am an attorney practicing mostly in Texas, criminal cases, people that are accused of crimes. So I am very excited about being a part of this esteemed panel and hopefully getting a chance to express some of my opinions about what we've seen going on in our world today. And again, thank you, Brother Aaron, to all the other esteemed members of the panel.
Thanks so much, Quinon Brooker. This next individual I have known for quite some time, just a very bright mind. He's a young preacher, has always been standing for social justice. He's even increased my understanding and my awareness of social issues across the board. And I just appreciate him. I highly respect his perspective in life in general. And so Jarad Davis, Pastor Jarad Davis, can you just greet the people of God?
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Jarad Davis. I am the executive pastor at the New Life Tabernacle Church of God in Christ in Houston, Texas, where my senior pastor is actually my father, Superintendent Carl Anthony Davis.
Yes.
And I'm glad to be here today. Aaron and I are good friends. We've had some very, very interesting conversations, and I for his perspective. And I'm looking forward to this very necessary conversation tonight. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jarad Davis. I appreciate you and your presence on this panel. I'm going to move to this guy right here. I have been seeing his posts on Facebook, and I think right now, I know we're having a lot of conversations. We as Black people, we're having a lot of conversations among ourselves. But I think right now we need allies. We need people that understand our cause. We need people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and help us move this agenda forward. And so I've been watching him on Facebook, and I have really appreciated the vocal stances he's taken during this very pivotal time. And so Kes Lutz, he's a professional musician. I had the privilege of working with him. I think it was about maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I had to open up for a few gospel artists in St. Louis. And he's an incredible musician, but also an incredible thinker and a passionate individual for this cause. And so Kes Lutz, can you just greet everyone?
Yeah, like you said, I'm a musician, and, just being, trying to be vocal and, just taking a stand. And but I'm also here to learn. I'm not here to educate. I'm here to learn. But also I want to bring a second opinion side to, help, and discuss change and discuss how we can have these difficult conversations with our white, people in America. Let's move forward. But I'm also here to learn. I'm very unlearned, so I'm here to learn and be educated so I can do more than just use my voice. So
I love that perspective, Kes. And let me tell you why I love that perspective before I introduce the last person. I love that perspective because I think right now everyone is obsessed with thinking they have the answer. I think everyone, it's just in general, I think it's our egoism sometimes that leads us to think we know all the answers, all perspectives, all angles of a situation. But when you deal with something as multifaceted as racism, I mean, there's so many answers and so many things that we can extrapolate from this that I think that we need everyone's brain contributing to this situation so we can unpack it and get the right answers across the board. And like I said, move forward. And so I appreciate that perspective, Kes. I really appreciate that. Moving forward to this next individual, let me take him off mute, everyone. He, okay, there we go. Okay, so this next individual, I really appreciate him. Y'all don't know this. Some of y'all don't know this, but he actually is was my realtor that helped to get my house. Listen, and his patience with me was extraordinary. To those that don't know that I can be a lot to sometimes interact with. And he has been a person that's just demonstrated extraordinary patience. And the reason why I invited him on this panel is because he's a business owner. And I think that we want to hear from his perspective as far as entrepreneurship, building wealth within the Black community, which I do believe is one of the answers amid all the other answers with regard to this predicament. So, Brother Joe Austin.
Hey, Aaron. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And everybody out there, I'm Joe Austin II, retired Air Force major. Just life has been very good to me. It wasn't always easy, but I'm thankful for all the opportunities that I had. I'm thankful for this panel. Again, like what was said before, I want to learn as well. I have my own life experiences. I have the business side. I have the professional, the personal side. And so I'm just excited to be a part of this panel and for us to dig in deeper together.
Yes. Awesome. 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 So without further ado, I want to just kind of start digging into this conversation, y'all. And like I said earlier, please share this broadcast to everyone on the panel. If you could share this to your individual pages, but also everyone share this broadcast that's watching. We're going to dig into some really deep issues, and I want to hear from you. This is not just about us. I want to hear from your valuable perspective, because I believe, like I said, you can contribute to this conversation and moving us forward collectively. And so the question I want to begin with in this very necessary conversation, I want to just first get everyone's reaction to watching the video, everyone's reaction to watching that atrocity that manifested there in Minnesota. I'm going to give you my thoughts first, because I just want to hear what you guys have to say, but let me give you my thoughts. It took me to a bad place. It took me to a place of absolute rage. It took me to a place of absolute anger. And I'm going to tell you why it really made me angry. When I saw the scowl and the smug facial expression of the officer as he kept his knee in George's neck, it was a look of zero accountability. It was a look of almost as if he was saying and communicating through his expression, I dare you to do something about this, as the people stood on the sidelines watching. And it was this look of, I know that I'm immune from consequence and discipline and, tyrannical power that has not been checked, that has not been corrected. It was a person that was almost proud to demonstrate to the people that was watching, I'm in control of the situation and I can handle this man however I see fit. And that type of stance and disposition really angered me. And then I began to think about my own experiences. I posted on Facebook my first racist encounter with policemen. I just very quickly, I was pulled over for a broken taillight, hardly a federal crime, but I was pulled over for a broken taillight. I thought that they would just look up my information and tell me to continue moving forward. But no, I was told to step out of the car, and I was immediately confounded, like, what's going on? Because people that know me, I am straight as an arrow. I obey, and, I like to make sure that I'm dotting every I and crossing every T. That's just my personality. I like to do the right thing because I care about principles. I'm a very principled person. And so you tell me to step out of the car, I'm like, hold on, this has to be some mix-up, because not me, not Aaron Fuller. I didn't do anything. And so he told me to step out of the car, and he instantly starts arresting me. And I said, what are you doing? What happened? I mean, I didn't run over anybody. There's nothing I did in this that would warrant you to arrest me for a broken taillight. Would you told me I had a broken taillight? And he tells me, no, we're arresting you because you have warrants in your name. Now, I'm thinking, no, I've not been put over. I don't have warrants in my name. Well, come to find out, my name was being used, but when they pulled the information, because the person that was using my name, when they pulled the information, they showed the face of the individual. I pointed to it and I said, that's not me. That's not me. That's a totally separate person. And his response was so cavalier. His response said, you all look alike. And I couldn't believe it. I was dumbfounded. And I began to immediately thank God, because sometimes we, as, I don't want to say uppity Black people, but I'll say those of us who have a bit, what we like to say, we were articulate and we're college educated and, we have attained to some success in life, that we are immune to certain situations like that. But that's not the case. It's not our nobility that even protects us and barricades us from these types of disgusting situations and interactions that we have with the cops. And so it just took me to a place of anger. It took me a place of vindictiveness, wanting to get back at this man, wanting to do all I can to obliterate any type of happiness that this individual had amassed for himself. I was just incredibly angry. And so that was my visceral reaction when watching the video. I want to hear from my panel. What did you think as you were watching the video? Sophia, let's hear from you. What were your thoughts as you were watching it?
Okay, so I did not watch the video. I have no more interest in seeing dead Black bodies. It's not good for my mental health. I don't think it's good for our community. And I'm also getting concerned about this social agreement we are starting to build, where we have to film our trauma, And if we scream loud enough, maybe we'll get justice. And I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
But the still shot was enough for me. Seeing someone laying on the ground with a knee on their neck, the narrative was enough for me. We went through this with Eric Garner. Him being handcuffed was enough for me.
Yeah.
Dylan Roof is enough for me. A mass murderer who walks away. So I don't really care what this man did. I feel like his death and all of those things was enough for me to say, okay, I don't need to see the video.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I agree with everything you said. A lot of us do think, or some of us we have the education, or we can articulate, and maybe our class status has changed. We think we are above these issues, and it's always a painful reminder.
Yeah.
It still see you the same.
Wow. Thanks so much, Sophia. Thanks so much for that perspective. Quinon Brooker, what about you? Did you watch the video? What was your immediate response to it?
I did, and honestly, when I heard your response and how you felt about being pulled over, I think that is oftentimes, unfortunately, the reality is that a wake-up call is needed for many of us that are so-called educated, so-called made it or accomplished some things in life. Many times you kind of need that wake-up call because even for myself, it took to personally observe some of these things. And for me, it was the Mike Brown case. That's the one that kind of got me on my track. So when I saw the George Floyd case, how does someone with trauma respond? See, I already got trauma. I already have the trauma from observing Black men that could be my brother, my cousin, my nephew, my son, or myself, because I already have that trauma. And then I see it again. Of course, I'm fearful, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm frustrated because I feel like there's nothing that I can do in a situation like that. So the question that I ask myself is, what would you do in a situation like this? Not if it was you with the knee on your neck, asphyxiating you, but what would you do if you saw your friend or even a Black man that you don't know? How do you respond to that? And so, unfortunately, I'm not even satisfied with the answers that I came up with because I don't know. So for me, it was a litany and a combination of emotions. But again, how does a person with trauma respond to a repeated traumatic event? So if we had a psychologist on this panel, then they could explain that more. But I would imagine that I felt those types of symptoms. And I think all of us as Black men in this country do. And I think also that there may even be some other individuals that are not necessarily the same hue as us that are starting to feel that trauma for us. So again, angry, frustrated, upset, confused, and really just afraid. You don't want this to happen to yourself or to any of your loved ones. And it seems like it can happen to any of us, regardless of your socioeconomic status or your level of education.
So true. So true. And I think you said something, Quinon, that was very true for me. And I was telling the panel actually before, I think someone dropped, I think Kes had to drop it. Actually before we got on, I began telling, let me bring them back in. I began telling the panel that I cannot believe this. This is a very humiliating statement. But when I was in middle school, I actually debated my father, who of course has more extensive years than I do in this thing called life. I was telling him, Father, racism is over. I just can't believe you're still talking about this. I can't believe that we're still having conversations about this. I mean, Dad, that was in your time, your day. Listen, quit trying to impose your trauma on me. I'm fine. I have white friends. I have Black friends. I told my friends earlier, I said that statement did not age well at all. All. And my father refuses to let me get over it. He continues to say, even yesterday, he said, son, isn't this so interesting how all this is happening after racism is over? Isn't that interesting? And I said, Dad, listen.
Well, Aaron, you can't be blamed. You can't be blamed for feeling that way because look at your education system. Look at what you're taught about the history of this country. Look at what you see on television. 7 days a week with no vacation. So we're taught that it's over and we should move on. that there should be no accountability for those that put us in this situation.
Yeah.
And so I don't blame my people for being in the condition that we're in, but I often do have issues with the fact that we have failed to reconcile after achieving and understanding the situation that we're in. We still are in a sense of denial, many of us.
Yeah.
So I don't blame a child for feeling that way. My son, he grows up in a multicultural, he grows up in a white neighborhood and he attends a white school. And so I often have to explain certain realities to him. Yeah. So it's no surprise that you felt that way. And I could even say, even for myself, there were times when I experienced that type of thinking. But in 2015 with Mike Brown, all of my views came to a crashing reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think, I think we all need that. We all need that critical moment that just kind of wakes us up to what's going on. And so, I think Mike Brown was also mine. But then that me being stopped by the policeman, that really kind of woke me up that, listen, in all of your attaining, there are going to be people that still consider you to be a statistic, that will still consider you to be just one of the others. And there's no uniqueness or individuality about you. You're just, just like the rest, whoever they think that you are, whatever internal or innate criminal aspects about yourself that you have or instincts, they're going to brand you and label you and treat you accordingly across the board. And so that just really kind of go ahead, Sophia. I see you had some. Let me take you off mute. I'm still.
No, it's okay.
Y'all
I just want to be careful.
Go ahead, Sophia.
If you are a crook, if you are a criminal, you do not get treated that way.
Yeah.
You get tried in the court of law. So we have to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
That is not how you treat a human being.
Very true.
And I think that's what we have to make sure we don't divide. That's exactly what we tend to do with our language. It's like, you guys, of course, they're going to treat you like that because you dress like this or you talk like this. No, that's unacceptable, period.
Yeah. So true.
That's all I wanted to say.
So true, Sophia. So true. Jarad, I'm going to go to you. What was your immediate response to watching that video, if you did see it?
Thank you for the question. And I'm actually like Sophia. I have not yet watched the video, and I refuse to watch the video because it does take me to a dark place.
Yeah.
I, like you all have already mentioned, and I think most of us have been brought up with this mindset, but brought up with a talented 10th mindset that lets us know that we are supposed to be the bearers of Blackness, that we are the ones that are supposed to use our articulation and our intelligence and the way we carry ourselves to represent Black people and to bring those of us who may not have the access and the privilege that we do up. And I think my wake-up call, as you all have kind of discussed, your own wake-up calls, was my very own experience in Los Angeles, California, where I was out there on vacation with my family, my wife, my kids, my sister, my mother. My father had been there, but he had to leave a day early. And I was pulled over on the side of the 405 freeway in Los Angeles, California. Traffic is backed up. And cops pulled me out of my car with my hands up, made me get down on my knees on the side of the freeway and put a gun to my head, several guns, in fact. The scariest moment of my life. And again, that was my wake-up call because it allowed me to realize that it did not matter that I was a preacher. It did not matter that I was a father, a teacher, a husband. It did not matter that I had a master's degree. All they saw was a Black man that fit the description. So again, I'm like Sophia. I did not need to watch the video because all of that trauma came back as I just saw the steel of this man with his knee on the neck of George Floyd, with his hands in his pocket, like you said, Aaron, with his arrogance and smugness on his face, probably one of the most demonic illustrations of brutality that I have ever seen in my life. So I agree that I don't think I need to bear witness to 8 minutes of that just to understand the trepidation and the fear that I'm sure George Floyd was going through at that time, because I realized that I could be in that number, and you all have already stated it yourselves. So many Black men that have experienced the same thing that I experienced. And not only that, as I've been sharing, this is not just about Black men. This is about Black women, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, This is about Black girls, the young girl that was assaulted in Fort Worth and Dallas. This is about Black boys, Tamir Rice being 12 years old. And I always want to emphasize that point because we tend to adultify children like Tamir Rice, but he was a child. There's no reason why his life should have been taken without any type of pause or hesitation from the cops. So again, the outrage, the frustration, the sadness, the heartbrokenness, all of that has been swirling around as I've been experiencing this week.
Yeah, such great comments, Pastor Davis. I really appreciate that. I'm just gonna keep it at, keep moving. And Brother Austin, what were your initial impressions from the video, if you saw it?
I did watch part of it. My first impression was just an intense hurt. Picturing my son on the ground, his face there, and being helpless.
Yeah.
I think as a father, that's how I looked at it. Not even really as concerned about me, even though I know it could have been me as well. But my initial reaction was, that's my son on the ground, and I can't do anything about it. As much as I tried to prepare him, as much as I tried to tell him about life, like we just said. So I think inside of me, it was just an intense hurt. Then later on, it turned to even more sadness because my daughter stated, no matter what we do, no matter how educated we get, no matter what we do, it does not matter.
Yeah.
And then that made me really, really sad because I'm like, as a father, again, I'm trying to do the best for my kids to make sure that I have leveled that playing field. Not worried about me, but really looking at that. But as we all have our stories as well, hey, I've been in the back of a police car, even though I did nothing wrong. I called the police because some people were terrorizing my wife and I after church and our family when we were in Nebraska. And I called the police for assistance. And next thing you know, hey, they show up and I'm like, great, let's get some help. And I'm in the back of the police car for my own safety.
Wow.
Top secret security clearance in the military and all of that.
Wow.
But people don't understand that. I've flown airplanes. I've flown in one time. I had an issue getting back to my home base, and I landed at another place. And when I walked inside, because my instructor had told me to land there and wait for them to come back, I was actually called the N-word, like saying, why is he here? But people don't understand that. I'm a pilot. I just flew this airplane in.
Yeah.
And you're talking that way to me. So people don't understand that. But that's the problem, because that prejudice inside, when that gets to the police force or to the judicial system, now they don't care who you are, just like what was stated. They don't care if you're an educated person. They see me as this.
Yeah.
And that's what really hurts.
Wow. Jesus. Kes, what were your thoughts? Did you see the video? It looks like he's having some difficulties, some technical difficulty. Well, okay, so looks like he just came. Let me try to add him, everyone. Hey, Kes, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
So major connection issues.
Okay.
So just bear with me. I'm trying to fix it, but it keeps going in and out. I have to keep refreshing the page. So please bear with me.
So what was your initial impression, your emotional reaction? What were your thoughts as you watched that video with George Floyd being killed?
Go ahead. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking, what were your initial thoughts from the George Floyd video? What was your response?
To be honest with you, I didn't make it through the whole thing. I'll just be honest with you. I think I got to the point to where I saw his hands in his pockets and he was just like chilling, you know what I mean? And that really hit home to me, because like, I'm like, man, you just got your arm, like your hands in your pockets, like you're just chilling. You got your knee on this dude's neck and you're just sitting there. You know what I mean? Like it it's not affecting him at all. Like, he's just like, and like you said, man, I agree 100%. The look on his face, the way his demeanor, the way he had his hand in his pockets, it seemed like he was like, he just knew, like, I'm going to get out of this. I can do this. And, you know, and I'm going to get away with it. And that was my main takeaway just from that perspective. But man, just the overall just severeness of what happened that day. I mean, it's just sickening. And really, this goes back for, you know, we've all been saying, like, it's been happening for several years, but you know, it's just
listen.
This just was different
since times of old. Listen,
we need change.
Okay, it looks like we lost him again. We hope that the Lord touches his computer and touches his network quality. God, do it for him. We need some intercessors that are watching. Please begin to intercede ASAPly, okay? So while he's working that out, I'm going to ask this question because this is how is this allowed to continue? I'm trying to understand, what is the culture that allows this to continue to happen? Of course, we know it's racism, and I know it's multi-layered. I know there's an entire system, you know, of the good old boy system that continues to protect cops. And, you know, what is the culture that allows this and emboldens this spirit to continue to do this, even while being recorded? I would have thought that you would have had some type of, I don't know, moral compass to see that you're on film to not, you know, to snap you back into some level of reasonableness. But he just sat there and stared at the film, and I'm trying to understand, somebody help me. How is this allowed to continue? Please, somebody help me. And if you're talking, let me take you off mute, Jarad. Go ahead.
So I was actually talking with Quinon about this the other night, and I think we both agreed that the very fabric of this country is white supremacy. Yeah. And I always, I guess, have to clarify that when I say white supremacy, I'm not saying white individuals. I'm not saying that every white person is evil, but we have to be able to acknowledge that there is a system in its place in this country. We have literally been built off the economy of enslaved African people. So that system continues to pervade our very nation, and it's baked into it. This is not some type of ancillary measure. This is not something off to the side. It is not something that we're guessing or imagining. It is the very crux, the very design of a system. And I once heard somebody say, a system is designed to get the outcomes that it gets. So when you see what is happening in our world today, it's by design. When you see this cop who can look into the camera with the arrogance and the smugness that he looked into it, you said it yourself, Aaron. He said that you can't hold me accountable because I am part of the system that privileges from this type of action. So it's hard to do away with a type of behavior when that is what that system is built upon, and you feel like you can get away with it anyway.
Yeah. I thought I saw Quinon about to say something. Were you about to say something, Quinon?
Oh, you know this is my thing right here.
Come on here.
Aaron.
Let us hear.
And listen, white supremacy is definitely a system, and the police force has historically been the enforcement arm of that system. And so when you have hundreds of years of documented instances of lynchings where there's little to no accountability, police killings of unarmed Black men, police participating in lynchings in this country, the system has been established and it is exceedingly efficient at what it does.
Yeah.
It is on autopilot at this point. In other words, there's not much more that needs to happen other than to continue to recycle individuals and to continue to indoctrinate the new participants. Yeah. So when you have a system that works so well, you could imagine after, and let's just call it what it is, 401 years of white supremacy as a system in our country, it's working like clockwork.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have the enforcement arm of white supremacy in many cases. Unfortunately, many individuals in our law enforcement agencies operate as the enforcement arm. When those individuals who understand the system, that they're going to be protected by their superiors, protected by their colleagues, like Tuthau, Chauvin's partner, who was protecting him as he was killing George Floyd. When you have the district attorney that you know is going to protect you, this is a man that had, I understand, 18 previous complaints against him. And I did see the report. I believe that there were 2 written reprimands, nothing substantial in terms of discipline. So again, he understands the system. And because he understands the system, he was brazen in his activity because he knows that the system is going to take care of its enforcement arm. And so again, this is not something that, for us who fail to understand how the system works, like Neely Fuller said, we will only be confused by its outcome because we don't really understand how it works. He does.
Yeah.
He knows very well how it works from his very important role within the system. Yeah. And so when we start to understand that there is an open war against the black man and black woman in this country, when we accept that fact, then we can start to view and understand the strategies and tactics of the system. And once we get that system understood, then and only then can we devise some sort of counter strategy.
Yeah.
But if we keep walking around as if this is not a system, as if there's not a plan against us, then we are not going to have the necessary and effective means to retaliate and defend ourselves.
Yes, and I appreciate those thoughts. And I have to say something, because I had a bit of a spirited debate with a friend. I think it was either Saturday or the day before, because he was saying, I'm just tired of people just trying to brand all cops like this cop here. And I'm tired of people, you know what I'm saying? There are good cops out there. There are good, people that are implementing and enforcing the law and everything. And this was my contention with that. And I want to hear your feedback, everyone, on this. We can't just throw out terms without defining what they are. And I asked him, I said, what do you mean by good cop? I want to understand what classifies as good, what behaviors make or qualify a person as a good cop. And I said, the reason I'm asking you is this. And the person I was talking to, he was a teacher. And I asked him a question. I said, if you walk into a classroom and you have a colleague and you walk up on a situation where a colleague is just berating a child, abusing a child, talking terribly to the child, I mean, just trying to obliterate the self-esteem of that child, and you walk out of the classroom without doing anything, or without saying anything, or without trying to investigate why this is happening or why this is taking place, you turn a blind eye. I'm trying to understand you as a teacher, you as a person who's supposed to care about children. That's what you signed up for. That's what your entire assignment is. For that not to in some way trigger you emotionally, or in some way drive you to be curious to understand what's happening, what's the background about this, and how can we stop this? This is inappropriate, this is unacceptable, and I need to make sure in some way that we're bringing awareness to this so that this does not continue. If you, through your silence, embolden that to continue, I'm trying to understand, are you a moral teacher? I'm trying to understand, are you governed by principles and values? Because my thing is, if we're calling good cops that remain silent about these continued atrocities, then are they good cops? Are they cops that are good if they continue through their silence to embolden the brazenness of these cops that, continue to do this? So I'm trying to understand, how do we define that good cop, bad cop argument? What is that? I want somebody to talk back to me, and I want to hear what you have to say about that. Let me see. I'm going to ask you, Sophia, what do you think about that? I'm coming to you. Sophia, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, okay, first let me say, I just started doing my research on the police force, and I didn't realize how it all began in America. And so everyone is right. Y'all, the system is doing exactly what it was supposed to be doing. If you look up the first slave patrol, that person became a cop. And basically it was to protect the economics of white people. Okay, it's always about economics. Just don't have them touch our money, keep them away from here, keep them in their place. And I'm sure there was more. I have so much more research to do, but that's the first thing I learned. Okay, so it is definitely, the man can sit there with a smug look on his face, with his hand in his pocket, because he understands the system is there to support him. Okay, the good cop, bad cop. So in Minnesota, there are policies in place for other officers to actually stop their partners when they notice there has been excessive force. So yeah, that argument kind of goes out the window. There are good cops. If you are witnessing these things, which we know they are, and they are not standing up, they are not protecting, they are not serving. Sometimes I feel like we're in an alternate universe that we have to even make these statements and these arguments. But yeah, simply put, if you are there and you see there's excessive force, I really don't know how you can argue that that's still a good cop when your job is literally under the guise of protecting and serving the community.
It looks, I think, I'm trying to, Quinon, were you about to say something?
The only thing I was going to suggest is this, Brother Fuller. I'm not interested in the good cop versus bad cop argument. I think that it is a waste of time. That is not what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is the killing of unarmed Black men and women in this country. And I think one of the tactics of white supremacy is to get us to focus on things that are not relevant. They throw out these dog whistle arguments, Black on Black crime, nonsense, good cop versus bad cop. So we spend all of this time arguing and debating the merits of the good cop versus the bad cop. Guess what? I know some excellent police officers. Some of them are my close friends, brothers that I went to college with, brothers that I worshiped with, brothers that I do community service with. They are great individuals, and I'm quite certain that they do their job well. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is white supremacy and how the law enforcement, how that industry as a whole has been utilized by white supremacy. That's what we need to be talking about. I'm not getting into an argument about who's bad versus who's good. Neely Fuller said that time wasting is one of the downfalls of Black people. I'm not here to waste my time on that argument because it's nonsense. It's not relevant to what happened there. We know that that individual that killed George Floyd was a racist. We know that because we saw with our own eyes. I did watch the entire video. I didn't want to. It took me a while to watch it, but ultimately I had to because I wanted to see, okay, what are the arguments that they're going to put up? I'm curious as to how they're going to try to spin this. So I had to watch it. And those were the acts of a racist. And those other three officers that were there were complicit. They weren't just protecting, they assisted in the murder of that individual. So we have a law called the law of parties. The law of parties means that another individual can commit the offense, but if you are there and you know what that person intends to do, you're also guilty. So again, those other officers were complicit because they understand the system. There were no good cops there that day, so I don't even know why we're even talking about it.
Right, and you know what I think also annoys me. I think Jared's about to say some. Let me say this one thing. I think another thing that annoys me is I'm not concerned. And how do I say this? I'm not concerned with you turning a situation that's clearly about the murder of this man, and trying to factor in your feelings of victimization. What do I mean by that is you got people, and I've heard from white people, well, I'm not racist. And I mean, I'm not out there doing this. I'm not out there committing these atrocities. I'm not out. So why everybody coming against race? Listen, the only centerpiece of discussion that we should be having right now is this man that was killed. You feeling disenfranchised or feeling like you're being painted with a broad brush, you playing victim is irrelevant concerning the weight of what has just transpired. You coming saying, well, I'm a cop and I'm a good cop and I don't need y'all talking about me because you talking about you feeling like a victim after this man, his existence was extinguished off of the face of the earth. I'm not concerned about your victim status. And I think that goes back to what you're saying, which is exactly what you said, Quinon, that we need to make sure to keep the main thing, because all of these things that are happening on, the periphery, it's causing us to detract from the main conversation that we're having. And if we don't keep that as the focus, then we're going to undermine our effectiveness as we continue to move forward. So my thing is, you brought up Black on Black crime, because I've heard this argument too. Now, before y'all, I know, listen, I understand the saints have, been really crying loud and sparing not against Black on Black crime, that our outrage concerning what is happening with these police officer involved fatalities, that it's not proportionate, it's disproportionate in our response to that versus the Black on Black crime, the things that are happening, the dysfunction that's happening, quote unquote, within our own neighborhood. What do you say to the people that are saying, listen, if we're going to march in the streets with regard to what is happening with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, then why are we not cohesively and passionately in this case, why is our passion not as comparable in addressing black on black crime? I want to hear what you guys have to say about that. And let me know who I need to take off mute.
I'll say.
Okay, go ahead, Jarad.
First of all, that is a lie. That's a lie. I know plenty of people who are passionate about the crime that happened in their very own community. The issue is the media doesn't focus on it until we see something of this magnitude. And then, again, they use that spin tactic to say, y'all need to take care of your own communities first. But I know plenty of people, plenty of activists who are looking to deter crime in their very own communities. And that has been work that they have been doing for years. Additional to that, I think we have to understand that even if we do want to term it black on black crime, which for one is a misguided moniker anyway, because crime is about proximity. You're more likely to commit a crime against somebody that is near you. So with that being said, because of segregation, because of redlining, not only are black folks more likely to kill black folks, but white folks are more likely to kill white folks, and Latino folks are more likely to kill Latino folks. It's about proximity. In addition to that, I said this the other night in a conversation that I was having. If you take, we talk about Chicago oftentimes as the epicenter of black on black crime. But if you take a large group of people, place them in a tiny box, and take out all the resources, all the opportunities, all the money, and instead import drugs and assault weapons, and tell them that they have to survive, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to find a way to survive as best they can. And that is going to come through crime, through violence, because they have no other opportunities. Trust and believe. If you have meaningful opportunities, if you have meaningful resources, nobody is thinking about committing crime. But because of supremacist tactics, because of ways that policies have literally caused black people to be in a certain area to where they were nearly this close to each other, literally this close to each other, and took away all the resources, we see this crime happening on the scale that it is. But again, it's not just black on black. This is a result of intentional, policy-driven segregation.
Yeah. Let me take you off mute, Sophia.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for saying that, Jarad. I think about what happened at the beginning of this pandemic and how folks ran to get armed. Like the gun sales drove all the way up because they understood what it was about to be, supply and demand. Okay. So anyway. Okay. So let's talk about the black on black crime. I think people are missing another good point. We are fighting, we are marching also because we are asking for justice. When black people do crimes, check out the mass incarceration system. When black people do crimes, violent or nonviolent, they get locked up. So I'm like, how are we still like missing the purpose of the whole Black Lives Matter? That's another part of it. It's one of the biggest parts. We're asking for justice.
Yeah.
It's not being served.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're missing. And it's also interesting that we keep falling for this bait and switch of divide and conquer. It's like, this is not the time to be talking about that. We can talk about that. That should be on, the topic of discussion. But for crying out loud, in the middle of fighting for a man's life, in the middle of fighting for the justice of future generations, it's a fine time to bring up that argument. And it happens without fail every single time.
Every single time. Every single time. And I'm going to pause to say to all those that are watching, please take a moment to hit that share button. If this conversation, let me tell you something. I didn't call this podcast Necessary Conversations for nothing. I called it Necessary Conversations because these right here, these discussions right now that we're having, they're necessary for the forward progression of us as a people and in general. So I want you to please hit that share button. We need to get this message out. We need to talk through these issues. We need to just really unpack this so that we can move forward. And so please hit that share button, comment. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your perspectives. I want to go to this next issue because I think that we've also seen a lot of upheaval on Facebook with people debating with regard to the rioting and the looting. And, you know, I told the panel before we came on, I said, I'm trying to understand which Jesus I want to identify with at this time. You know,
come on!
I'm trying to understand, do I want to identify with the Jesus that healed the ear of the soldier?
I'm Peter.
After Peter, right. Or do I want to identify with the Jesus that went into the temple and committed vandalism?
Come on now.
I want to understand, should I identify with the vandalism-esque Jesus at this time? And so you're hearing people say the rioting and the looting is not an answer, that this is ridiculous, that, you know, this is not helping our cause in any way. You have other people saying, well, listen, this is a casualty of war. You know, we shouldn't be doing this, you know. So what are you guys, what is your response to people that criticize some of the vandalism that is happening, the rioting, the looting? What is your response to those people that have an opposing view to these events that are manifesting on the news? Who wants to take that?
Hey, Aaron, I'll take a stab at that.
Go ahead.
So in the beginning, I'll be honest, you know, I'm a business person. So my initial reaction is, you know, looting is wrong. I mean, I don't have a problem with protesting, but the whole looting in my eyes was wrong. But then I started doing research on it. And I started looking up how these riots, not just looting, but the whole riot situation and how many riots has occurred throughout our country, and how, for the most part, I mean, there were various ones. I mean, there were a lot of them. I saw one, I think there was a white riot in Detroit where African-Americans were moving to Detroit to work on the assembly line. Whites didn't like it. And so they went out there and started turning over cars, and they got their point across. And I think they ended up making the blacks go somewhere else. So there's been a lot of stuff going on, a lot of rioting that has occurred. I don't agree with it, I'll be honest. But I will say that our country, there's been a lot of progress in advancing an agenda. I'm not going to say the agenda, but there's been a lot of progress in advancing an agenda based off of those type of items. Now, as a business owner, also the counter effect of that is, if you look at even like the Watts riots or something like that, when our own communities are now burned down, me as a business owner, how can I go back into that community? Is it even financially possible for me to do it? And I know people say, well, you have insurance. So yes, we do. But just like if you wreck your car, you know, if you don't have gap coverage, does it cover everything? And even at that, do you still want to go back and do that same situation? So I know for me personally, if my business were burned down in a certain area where we were trying to establish and progress the community, it would make me, first of all, think, does the community really want me there? And number two, do I fight to go back in, or do I go elsewhere? And I think that's the sad effect of this, because now our communities will lose businesses. And not only do we lose businesses, but we lose businesses that look like us. And then now our communities, the value from a real estate perspective continues to drop. So again, the whole rioting, looting, protesting is good, but violence, I haven't really been for. However, when you look at what has occurred in our country, it has been successful, even though it may not look the way we think it should look.
Yeah, so you brought up a question that I have, and I don't know who, maybe I don't know if Quinon or Jarad or Sophia. I wonder, I'm not totally, and I'm trying to watch my words, y'all, because I understand, I am a Christian. That is my worldview. That is my framework. And so I want to make sure that I'm aligning myself with Christian values. And I'm not saying that Jesus was some docile, mamby-pamby, weak kind of individual, because I think that we have to attack that notion. You know, people like to say that Jesus was a pacifist. I have my qualms with that sort of ideology. But I do know, as Martin Luther King said, I think it was him, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, that rioting is the language of the unheard. And so I do understand that passion and outrage will manifest. But I think I'm trying to understand, I guess, what is short-term messaging and long-term messaging. That's where I'm trying to understand that in the short term, it does get us the cause attention. It does elevate the awareness of it across the world. We see it happening in London and Italy, and I think Tokyo, we said earlier. So I know that the severity of what is going on, it elevates the visibility of what is happening. And like I said, it's just an expression of that outrage. But I wonder, once the dust clears and all of this is done, are we and we're left with the sheer wreckage? Does it in the long term, and someone help me with this, in the long term, does it do more harm than good? That's my question. Let me take you off mute, Jarad.
So several thoughts on this idea of rioting and looting, and to the question you just asked, does it help in the long term? There is a reason why the year 1776 is so significant in America. There is a reason why on July 4th, so many people will go out and pop fireworks, because it represents the liberation from British supremacy. It represents the knee that was on the neck of those who came to this country to get the knee off of their neck. So there was a literal riot that we now honor as the Boston Tea Party. There was literal violence that we now call the Revolutionary War, and we honor George Washington for using violence to get what they wanted. So there are a few things that I have with this issue of rioting that we're seeing right now. For one, my issue is, let's be discerning concerning who is actually doing the rioting and the looting. While there are some that may be rioting out of a traumatic response to this irrevocable act, there are several who are using this opportunity to cause divisiveness, to cause chaos with a literal mask of protests. They're not out there protesting for the cause. They're trying to divide. Second to that, I also think that a lot of people are just calling these young Black kids who are out there yelling and with their fists up, they're calling that rioting. And when they're just simply protesting, when they're just simply passionate about what's going on, when they're simply angry about what's going on, there is outrage. And so when we see angry Black people, then we get threatened. So I think a lot of people are also calling that rioting right there. Thirdly, I have this issue when people say, why would they destroy their own community? Why would they destroy their own community? And while I don't know what their actions may tell about their psychological state, can we really call it their own? I don't destroy something I own because I'm invested in what I own. But I can't destroy my own community if I feel like I don't have ownership in that actual community. If I feel like I'm not invested in that community. In fact, when my community has been divested of, I'm a resident of that community, but I don't benefit from anything. Again, there's food insecurity, there's education insecurity, there's economic insecurity. So when I feel like I don't have ownership, then I'm not destroying my own. And then finally, for those people who say that, again, this leads to nothing, we see that rioting, looting, and many times violence has led to a lot. We can look at the Haitian Revolution. It was the riots in Watts that led to Civil Rights Act. So we can look at many times where the initial traumatic response to something leads to further legislation, leads to further action. And then my final question is, why do we expect a rational response to an irrational provocation in the first place? I'm not blaming the rioting. I'm still blaming the officer who provoked this response in the first place.
Listen, Quinon, I'm gonna get you there. I'm gonna get Sophia. But listen, that last question, my God, I think that puts a lot in perspective. Like, if we're going to criticize or respond, and some people, I'm seeing them more heated, and I'm seeing them more angry and repulsed by the writing than the impetus behind it. And I'd be wanting to say, where are your passions? Where are the priority? What's the priority of your offense? What is the hierarchy of your emotionalism? If you are crying, I keep saying crying loud because this week people have been crying loud and sparing out and lifting up their voice like a trumpet in Zion, showing forth the people of God their transgressions. And I'm trying to understand where's your compassion meter if you're more concerned with the destruction of property than you are concerning the root cause of what inspired it. Quinon Brooker, I'm gonna go to you.
I appreciate that. Listen, in the history of, just Black people in this country, but also really in the history of the world, and we've talked about this a lot, never ever has an oppressed people received power through diplomacy. Never ever has an oppressed people come and said, hey, we're tired of you oppressing us now. So can you please stop and hand over some power to us so that we can have justice? What we do know, based on history, is that power is taken through force. You look at the United States of America, as Pastor Davis alluded to. That was a group of revolutionaries, is what we call them, because there was a revolutionary war that preceded other wars. They fought, they killed. That was a violent action that forced them to be able to receive some sort of freedom. They inflicted force in order to get a concession from Great Britain. But this has happened in the history of the entire world. So this is not something new. Why, when it approaches and applies to Black people, why is it that we can't partake or undertake some of those similar tactics is beyond me. But again, not only is it a historical truth and fact that force is needed and that force is used, but this is the issue. White supremacy in its activity will utilize all of its tools. One of its tools is going to be the media. We're sitting here talking about rioting and looting, again, diverting the argument away from the issue. We're spending time on it. We're arguing with our friends. But the most hurtful part of that tactic is that it's in Black people's minds. Well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Maybe we should be focused on the destruction and the vandalism. That is a psychological tactic that has been used on us and continues to be used on us, and because it's effective. Anytime the issue can be changed to divert a particular group away from the main point, that is a success. As long as we sit here talking about property and what we ought to be doing, literally the victims are doing all of this self-reflection. We're doing all of this introspection as to how we should respond. How are you going to tell us how to respond to our people being violently killed with no recourse? So again, when you look at history, it's not consistent with what you're expecting us to do. And to ask us to hold ourselves to a standard that no other people in the history of the world has held themselves to is unreasonable and it's nonsense. And it is a tactic of white supremacy.
So I guess you're telling all those that are, avid criticizers of the rioting and all that, you tell them to be encouraged and let God just be encouraged. I think that's what I'm getting from what you're saying. And I do stand corrected because I was one of those people that was like, I'm trying to. And then, as I said earlier, there is this war with me because I'm understanding as a Christian, where do I fit in some of my response to this? I'm trying to understand as a Christian. I want to make sure that I'm always, like I said, espousing Christian values. But I do think there is a place for forced response in terms of when you're responding to oppression. I think that there is a space for being able to even defend ourselves and advocate for the cause and using force when necessary when it calls for it. And my Christianity, I was battling because there's a militant Aaron that is rising up as I'm watching all of this, that I've not really been introduced to that militant Aaron. But the more that I watch this, it is causing something in me to rise up. My father just commented, "We are warriors." Yes, we are, Dad. Yes, we are. And so it was the Christianity that I was working with. I was working with to understand, how to factor all the rioting and the looting in to make sure that I'm always keeping myself aligned with the biblical position on it in terms of violence, in terms of protesting, and all of that. Before you respond, I'm going to get to Sophia. I know she has something that she wanted to say. I'm gonna go to you, Sophia.
I mean, is it Quinon or Quinon? Quinon? Quinon. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
You just basically summed it up. But I mean, yeah. I almost forgot what I was gonna say because you just said it so eloquently. But I will say, people focusing on the rioting, I find it interesting that they don't think about how effective the video is. Is it appropriate to videotape a man losing his life? And yet we are put in that position just to get justice. Just as it may not be appropriate to burn down a building. Yet here we are again, backed in the corner, put in this position to affect your economics. Because mind you, they don't see anything until their buildings are burned down. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. And I know in Ferguson, I feel so sorry for the small businesses. And I do feel like we have to be more strategic because I am of the era of burn it down. Burn it down. Like that's my mindset. Right now, they have pushed me to that point. We knelt, we marched, we cried, we voted. Y'all not listening. So at this point, we will affect your coin. We will affect your money. But I will say, in LA, which is where I am, they looted West Hollywood. I'm not saying I'm for the looting. However, I find it funny that they were not really saying much. And the quiver in the voices, it wasn't there. It was like not a major concern until you're on our street. Now what's in your backyard? And I feel like that's the thing. We got to take it to your backyard because people do not pay attention until it's in their backyard.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I got to say this. I will say this. I am tired of people thinking that Martin Luther King's way is the only way that there is, and he was the only civil rights leader that ever existed, and that the only instrumentality that we need to use to advance our cause is marching peacefully through the streets. And I remind people, even when he did his own way, y'all killed him. I mean, so let's be honest, even through the fruits of his own labor, and I think even, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may be wrong on this, but I think at one point of his life, he was put on the FBI dangerous man list, if I'm not mistaken. That the government was peeking into his conversations to understand the insurrection and uprising that he was inspiring. And I'm thinking to myself, even using his cause, you guys were so adamantly opposed to what he did that you extinguished his life. So he's not the only civil rights leader there was. There is a Malcolm X way. There are other people, you know what I'm saying, that contributed to the cause that were less, quote unquote, peaceful. And so a lot of times I think other people like to use MLK because it makes them comfortable. That's and I'm trying to be very careful when I say this, that's the civil rights leader that makes you warm and fuzzy. That's the one that makes you feel comfortable. That's the one that you can probably live peaceably with and still get your agenda and advance your agenda. You know, but there are other people who are of a different mindset that are not going to be as, and I'm not calling Martin Luther King anyway weak. I'm not identifying him in that bracket. What I am saying is sometimes because of his speech of peace and because of his refrain of nonviolence, that message a lot of times makes those that are opposed to our cause much more comfortable with that message and gravitating to their no harm being caused to them physically because they're able to still, like I said, advance their principles because after all, we're gonna be left unharmed and not affected by what you're trying to advance in terms of peacefulness. And so I think there are other civil rights leaders, those that are across the aisle. There are other civil rights leaders that had different approaches. There are other people that we need to study history and not just relegate our total understanding to protesting and rioting to Martin Luther King. We have to really increase our awareness because this is a multi-pronged issue and marching doesn't just get it done. I mean, putting up a Facebook status just doesn't get it done. There are a myriad of approaches that we need to use because guess what? Racism has infected all areas of civilization. I mean, the financial sector, housing, education, every pillar, every institution of society has been infected with racism. And you think that marching peacefully in the streets, it's all that's required to overturn what has been advanced and infected this civilization for years, hundreds of years? It's not realistic. And so I think that we have to be more realistic in our calculation concerning what is an appropriate response. We need all of it. We need the marching, we need the protesting, we need more forceful, responses to this. We need the full gamut to make sure that we're addressing every facet of society that racism has infected. I'm gonna go back to you, Sophia.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think everybody has their position to play. It's almost like the body of Christ, okay? We need everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody on their position. So the protest, the rioting, the looting, it definitely puts a face on it, because otherwise people would just ignore it altogether. However, I believe MLK died. Listen, this is what I know. This is what I've learned, because he was affecting the money. In America, we need to stop looking at America as a country and a cozy place. It is a company. And America is only concerned with her investors. That's it. And if we are not using our money to buy politicians, if we are not using our money to enforce the media, if we're not, that's all we really have, unfortunately. We cannot even ask them to respect our lives. Ask Jewish people. You cannot, at the end of the day, it's about the money. They don't have to like you.
Yeah.
But if you pay them enough, they'll respect you. That's where we are in this country. And I feel like that's what it is. I know on July 7th, they were talking about a boycott. And I'm like, you guys, the bus boycotts lasted for 381 days. I mean, it was like months. And I think that is the problem. I am finally understanding that all of us are going to have to give up a lot of things that capitalism has not prepared us for. So it's like no more being comfortable. For our white allies, Asian allies, Black, we are going to have to seriously make some adjustments to how we spend our money, to how we live our lives, basically. Because, and are you willing to die for it? I mean, it like our mindset has to be in a different place, because like Quinon said, people, they're not going to hand you their privilege. They're not going to hand you their freedom. What, you know what I mean? Like why would they be encouraged to do that? We're going to have to take it by force.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, I like to piggyback on that. I mean, from a finance perspective, I always like to say, after the march, nothing against, the civil rights movement. They did what they had to do at that time. We have a whole lot more, a larger economic status now than they did, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when they marched, now it's nothing wrong with us marching right now, but we should be doing more than marching. Right now, we should march. And just like Sophia said, with the finances, did you look at what COVID-19 did to all of the businesses? They were scrambling, borrowing money from the government, even ones that didn't even need it. So that's what we really have to do. We have to hit businesses where it hurts. I know me personally, if a business doesn't treat me right, if they have poor service, hey, I'm not going. And I'm the type, I won't go back. But a lot of times people will not have that same stamina. A one-day boycott, okay, I'm not going to buy anything on July 7th. What does that mean? I'm going to go buy stuff on July 6th and July 8th. So for the week, that business still made the same amount of money. That does not work. But like Sophia said, we have to have that stamina where all year we are not going to buy this. We are not going to support. I'm not going to buy a new car. If you want to hit the auto industry, no one buy new cars. If you want to, whatever you want to hit the airline industry, and I love aviation, don't fly anywhere. But we as a whole people, and I'm not just saying Black people, I'm saying people that are trying to err on the right side of history, you have to sacrifice that. One thing I always try to do, I recognize that the economic disparity has been there because of housing. Redlining, everything, whatever you want to call it, Blacks cannot buy houses. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate trying to educate and get people into houses so we can help overcome that wealth disparity. I think taking advantage of things like that, building our communities, making sure we have a valid voice, but we have to make sure we have the finances. If you look at other groups that went through similar situations as us, if you want to say, if you look at the Jews, they bought real estate. They own. You can't go in and mess with them now. But we never did that. And so we have money coming in, but it goes right back out. And so no one pays us any attention. But if we kept the money, then now we'd have a voice. And that's what we got to look at. But we don't want to keep the money. I want to be flashy and show you that I made it.
So I see Sophia has something.
Yeah, that's not always true. That's what I don't necessarily know if that's always the case. You know what I mean? When we talk about pass down, think about the housing crisis. I'm sorry. It's so distracting when I look at myself and I'm talking. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But, no, it's totally okay. It's totally okay. But basically just, I'm saying, I don't necessarily think that it's automatically in everybody's mind to be flashy. I know that there is a group of, Americans, and I feel like it's just beyond race. However, I think we should dig deeper. And I'm also asking you, what other reasons could there be? If it's redlining, it has to be something else. Maybe it's like we also don't have two-parent households. Like a lot of our men are locked up. So that vastly affects how much income is coming into a home. I think that there are ripple effects of these things that other communities just don't have to deal with.
Yeah.
Also, those communities got reparations. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the $600 that they're giving people? I'm like, I literally thought America did not have the money to give us reparations. And now that I'm seeing they got all this money, I'm like, so then what was the problem? It's strategic. It is so strategic to me. So we can't keep saying, oh, well, they just trying to be iced out. No, we don't have it. We were never given it. And we're still asking for it. So I think that it's a part of the problem. But again, it's kind of like the bait and switch. It's like the black on black crime to me. We cannot be held responsible for the position that we are in. That doesn't mean we can't work to get our way out of it. But I just don't think we can fully put that on us as a community because we're trying.
Before I go to you, I'm gonna let you go, Brother Austin. Then I'm gonna tag you, Quinon.
I mean, I agree that everyone's not trying to just blow money or whatever. But even if you look at my background, my mom died when I was 6 years old. I've had 3 stepmoms, but I've been married 23 years. So I tried to break that. Nothing against my father or anything like that, but it was something else in me that tried to break it. I think no matter what background we come from, the humble beginnings that we have, we can still use that to advance. I help people all the time. I just helped one couple in spring. They bought their first home, and he told me, he was like, Joe, no one in my family has ever bought a home. No one even thought this was possible. I've helped some people. One lady in particular made 6 figures, didn't know she could buy a house. So the lack of knowledge, I think right there is one of the things that affects us, and we have to work on. Were they bad people? Heck no, nicest people I've ever known. Just didn't know what to do. So I think we have to share our knowledge and be able to pull everybody else up and not feel like we're on an island where, okay, I've made it. I don't want Quinon to make it, or I don't want Jarad to make it, but we all have to collectively make it as a community. And when we do that, that helps out, because that person that didn't have that father, maybe I could be that father or that brother for them. Or that person that didn't have the mom. I grew up not having a mom, but my community, oh my gosh, they made sure I had mother figures. So that's where we have to be. Do I believe that the government should pay us or something? Hey, yeah, that's a different argument. But I believe we can make it no matter what we come from. It's all about this right here. Now, would I be a whole lot farther ahead if I had been given a handout? I mean, my dad didn't even give me a handout. I watched him give other people handouts, but not me. But we've made it, so to speak, if you want to say that. But I'm just saying, so it just really depends on what you really want to do and what you know. A lot of people just don't know that they can. And so that's where we as a community have to come together and encourage and equip and empower, knowing that that's how we all make it.
I'm going to bring in Quinon. I want to say one thing, though. Y'all, I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much from this conversation. This is enlightening me. I'm going to keep on saying it. Please hit that share button, y'all. If you believe this is a necessary conversation that people need to tune into, so that we can all discuss this together, that we can all put our minds together. I don't know why someone would call me while I'm doing this broadcast. We want them to be encouraged in Christ Jesus. But anyway, if you believe this is a necessary conversation that people need to tune into to build their awareness, to understand what is happening, to, like I said, bring our minds together, to think through this, to propose some real valuable solutions for our community moving forward, then please hit that share button, like this post, continue to comment. Let's spread this word. Quinon, let's hear from you.
Guilty, but not responsible. Many Black people are guilty of doing a lot of things, but we are not responsible for the condition that we're in. With respect to economics, white supremacy is based on all areas of human activity, and economics is number one. We will not get there with respect to economics until we are paid what we are due.
Thank you.
Which is approximately between 20 and 50, maybe even $100 trillion. So we can't be expected to compete economically. You've already talked about the policies that are federally legislated within the history of our country that were instituted in order to oppress us economically. You talked about the redlining. We all know about, obviously, slavery. That wasn't taken from us. That was them using us, using our bodies. So with respect to economics, ain't no catching up until they pay us what they owe us. That debt is not forgiven. In fact, there should be some interest on that debt. So with respect to economics, we got to understand that we cannot forget about that debt. That is the critical piece of this argument. That is the reason why we struggle so much socially. We struggle so much with our interactions among each other because we don't have the basic necessities to take care of ourselves. Notwithstanding the psychological trauma of a man that can't take care of his family or a woman that has to see her children hungry. So we have to understand that we may be guilty of some things with our money, because I know I went to the mall yesterday and bought some sneaks for my kids. That's what we do. But I ain't responsible for the condition that I'm in economically. I'm not responsible. And just real quick, with respect to King, the reason why they prop up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is awesome and as great as a hero as he was. The reason why they use King and not some of our other heroes is because it's easy to take his message and mismanage it, to tell it in a way that it wasn't intentionally meant for. See, because he talked about peace and love and all of that, but guess what? They feared him just like they feared the others, but his message was easy to manipulate.
Yep.
That's why they used King.
Yep.
They didn't love King. As you indicated, Brother Fuller, they murdered him. He's dead. They killed him. Yeah. Just like they take away many of our other leaders. And so certainly the CIA has a list of individuals that they consider Black messiahs. They are fearful of the Black Messiah because they already know that once we have a leader or someone that can articulate our views and bring us all together, then that means trouble for their system. So we just got to understand, when we allow white supremacy racism to shape the narrative, and then it gets into our minds, it's extremely deadly. Last point.
Yeah. You
talked about your issue with being a Christian and how that affects your thought processes here. We got to understand, we always had Jesus as Black people. We know this because the earliest Christian church was in Ethiopia. So we know we always had Jesus. But we didn't necessarily have this doctrine that was imposed upon us when we were brought to this country. And we got to be real careful to distinguish between the message and the true spirit of Jesus versus the doctrine that we're given in the church. And the purposes of that doctrine was to keep us in a position where they talk a lot about turn the other cheek, forgive those that despitefully use you, all of those things that benefit their oppressive position. So you just got to be careful. Let's go back to the root of what Jesus actually was teaching and his way of life. And I think that will help you in some regard. It has certainly helped me.
Yeah. Jarad, I'm going to go to you. You have something you want to say? There you go.
There have been so many things just said that I got to see if I can organize all of my thoughts. First of all, touching on Jesus, simply or similarly to Martin Luther King, we have sanitized the profile of Jesus just like we have sanitized the profile of Martin Luther King. As Quinon and so many have already mentioned, during the last years of King's life, he was focused on economic equality. He was looking at and living in the city of Chicago, living in the slums of Chicago, and pointing out the economic inequities. And that is what really got under the skin of our government. Once he started talking about the money, which you all have already articulated and so eloquently communicated, that's when we started to see King as dangerous. And now in 2020, we want to sanitize his name and use the peaceful parts of I Have a Dream speech, but we don't talk about the promissory notes that the United States of America have gone bankrupt on, or that they have not adequately addressed. So we look at the sanitized version of King, we look at the sanitized version of Jesus, but as you stated, Aaron, Jesus went into the temple and flipped over the tables because they were desecrating God's temple. And similarly, when we see law enforcement officers desecrating the black bodies or the temples of God, there should be a similar angry response that might sometimes cause us to flip over some metaphorical tables. Now, when we look at the economic aspect of all of this, I think Brother Joe brought up something that I thought was very key and profound. And then Quinon said something, he said, guilty but not responsible. I wonder oftentimes about the psychology and the sociology of why Black people, why we're so effective at dressing, why we're so effective at stunting. And I have even found that there is an intentional, predictable purpose in marketing where they look at Black people and they use us as the purveyors of culture. They use us as the markers of what is going to make something cool, what is going to make something sell. Not only that, we oftentimes blame Black people that are impoverished about buying sneakers or putting rims on their cars or wearing expensive clothes. But again, let's look at the sociology of that. If they were to go into a bank and try to get a loan for a business and they were able to simply buy what they could afford, would they get that loan? Or do they feel the need that just to be accepted, just to even be allowed into the bank, to be taken seriously, I might have to put on something that can be viewed as expensive. So there's a psychology and a sociology even behind that. And I think that's something we have to consider as well. Again, guilty, but not responsible. And then I look at homes and land, and I learned something very simple. As Black people, we are conditioned to believe that we need to work for the money in order to secure our first home. And I have to say, I'm a blessed man. I oftentimes tell people I hit the genetic lottery. I have parents who love me tremendously, and they had the means to actually give me the money to put the down payment on my first home. I was able to take that money, put the down payment on my first home. I lived in that for about 10 years, and then I recently sold it and made a nice profit off of it. I felt guilty because I took that gift from my parents. What I learned is that there are so many wealthy white people who got a gift for their first home, and now they're millionaires.
Yep.
Not alone. They didn't work for it. They didn't spend hours at McDonald's or Foot Locker making minimum wage until they saved enough money, pulled themselves up by the proverbial bootstraps. No, they had a parent that that was able to access and benefit from GI loans, that was able to get their land and build their house and make their money, their first million. So, son, I'm going to give you this money. Again, not as a loan, you don't have to pay it back, but I'm gonna give you this money, and then you go out and do your thing. So there's a legacy of wealth that was built that we just don't have as Black people, which again is a purposeful tactic that will allow us to stay in our place and then have these divisions where we say, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstrap. If I can make it, then you can. And that's the psychology of enslavement as well. When you can put certain people in the house and certain people in the field and cause division there and ensure that they don't agree, even when one wants to rebel, I'll have somebody that's looking out for master's house.
Yeah.
If you allow a few people to make it and say, we've seen some progress, the rest of y'all can do just as I did. That's a purposeful tactic. But I believe that everybody on this panel, including Brother Austin, because I've seen where he has intentionally set up environments to where he is showing people how to make that money. So that's not everybody, but I've also seen plenty of Black people who make it and then say, if I can make it, y'all can do it too, without giving any assistance.
Yeah. Great thoughts. Great thoughts. I really want to bring Kes. I'm going to bring you into this because I have a question for you. How do we talk to people across the aisle? How do we talk to people? How do we talk to whites? How do we help them understand our plight? What have you been seeing as you talk amongst your friends? How do we talk to your group to help better understand what we're fighting for our cause. Now, I'm not going to say that they don't understand. Most of them understand, and some of them just, choose not to understand. Some of them choose not to understand. But what have you been seeing amongst your group of people? How they opine their position? What have you been seeing in your community? I'm going to take you off mute here so we can hear your thoughts.
Man, that's a loaded question, man. To be honest with you, man, it's crazy. It's crazy out here. The responses I have been getting over the last few years, and it's the same. It's like I notice the same names. I know the same people that are on my friends list or on, whatever, and they get on there and, they always have something to say, to essentially back up the white agenda. You know what I mean? And it's just not, it's difficult because it's the same people that when you say Black Lives Matter, they say all lives matter because it hurts them for that to come out of their mouth. It's like they can't even muster up the words to say Black Lives Matter, and it's the same people that, the Trump, how Trump says everything about the media and, fake news. But ever since this has happened, they're believing every word that the media is saying about the riots and protesting.
That's a good point.
And all of that. It's the same people. So there's a fine, I mean, as a Christian and as someone who, for me, I play in the gospel music industry. So 9 times out of 10, I'm the only white guy in the room. And nowadays I prefer that. And it's just, it's difficult to have that conversation because they refuse to see. But what I've noticed is if you force the issue, it's almost like you have to force the issue. You have to have these tough conversations. And I've been encouraging everybody that I talk to, you have to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
You have to be able to hear the other side and be like asking, what are your personal, backgrounds with police brutality or, even in the church, racism in the church. We got, white pastors with cultural congregations that don't have any Black leaders on their, staff, but yet they want to, bridge the gap, but yet they really don't. It's like a business thing, and it's difficult to have the conversation. It's not accepted. I mean, every person. Now, there's a lot of people. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of people that are changing. There's a lot of people that's at least acknowledging that there's something wrong. But there's a lot of stuff. We just have to learn how to educate each other. You know what I mean? And
yes.
And I'm learning so much just in this. I finally got my connection working. I can hear you guys.
Yeah.
And I'm finally, but I'm learning, man. And I think that it starts there for a lot of white people. Like, if you grew up in a home with 2 parents and, you grew up in a home that was a very nice home, and then you go and your dad buys your first car or your dad buys, and they have this money to, support your early life, and you get a good start. White people don't even realize because their whole life is just privilege. They don't even realize anything outside of their bubble. And so that's why the conversation is difficult. I think the best way is to just you got to force the issue. But they're always, what I tell everybody, listen to Black people and don't interject your opinion.
Great thoughts, Kes. Great thoughts. I'm looking at my panel and I'm seeing Quinon and Sophia that seem like they're just bursting and bubbling over with commentary. So Sophia, let the Lord use you.
No. First of all, Kes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kes.
You know what I mean? Just sitting here, you've been listening as you should. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
This is where I am. We have allies. We have some white allies. Okay. I think when we look at Black churches, I think about my church that I went to at Oasis. It was passed down. A white pastor gave his church to a Black young man. I'm thinking about Michael Todd and Transformation Church, how a white pastor. So we do have allies. I'm not worried about the Trump supporters anymore. I'm not trying to convince somebody to like me. I'm not trying to convince a child of God that I'm a human and that I'm being mistreated. I think it was like Dave Chappelle, or maybe it was Chris Rock, who said, would you want to trade places with a black man? So I don't want to hear, oh, they don't know how good they got it. Yes, they do. They know how good they got it. If you ask them would they trade places with any minority in this country, I know you would get overwhelmingly all of them saying no. So the ignorance, miss me with that.
Yeah.
We need to start with what we have. Look in your hand. Wasn't that Adam Clayton Powell's message? What do we have in our hand? Who is in our corner right now?
Yeah.
And I feel like black pastors are going to have to invite white pastors to the church. We can no longer wait for them. If you know you have an ally,
yeah,
build coalitions. Like, it's time for us to get a little more aggressive, and we may have to share some of that power. Like, I know pastors, they want to be in control. It's your flock. Baptists are going to have to meet with Pentecostals. Kojics are going to have to meet with the Methodists. Like, enough with all of that. We need all hands on deck.
Yes.
And we look across the aisle, like white churches and black churches, Asian churches. Like, if we really look at who is in our corner, Amish people were out, y'all.
Yeah.
They don't come out. Right. We got people. But we steady worrying about those who are just more concerned with political power.
Yeah.
And let that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know what I'm tired of seeing. I'm tired of seeing black people on my timeline make a request for whites to speak up. I'm so sick of that.
Yeah.
Where are my white friends? Where are my white Your silence is loud. Listen, if you have to request for someone to make their position known, then the position has been known.
It's been known,
so,
y'all.
Let's stop this trying to understand why the silence is there, why aren't people speaking up. If you have to appeal to them to express their position, then most likely you already know their position. Listen, let's just move forward with who we got. Let's understand who's on our team, and let's just keep it trucking. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to keep begging people to make a statement. I mean, to me, it's useless. It's unproductive. It's a waste of time. Quinon, I think you were going to say something. I'm trying to. Quinon, I think you muted yourself. Yeah, unmute you. There you go.
There we go. Thank you all, and I appreciate the time. I think that white people understand what white supremacy is. White people created white supremacy. They implemented it. They engineered it. So I do believe that they know full well what it is. I don't think they're ignorant about what it is, how it works, because they teach it. Yeah. And I'm not saying all white people, of course, that wouldn't even be logical. But by and large, white people do understand the dynamics of the privilege that they receive, and they resent the fact that it gets called out.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we need to do that. I'm not interested necessarily in partnering with white people on how to deal with this issue. I do accept their friendship, and I do accept the fact that, I got white friends too, right? I have white people that come to me all the time and tell me, hey, I think this is what we should do and all that. And I think that's great, but that's not something that I lay at their feet. Yeah. I think that black people have to create these solutions as to how to destroy white supremacy, racism. My other point is this. The thing I think that many white people don't understand is that in many ways, white supremacy also hurts them too. It really does. It's a lie. It's based on a doctrine full of lies. Yeah. And when you are teaching children how to lie and how to hate and how to discriminate and how to hurt, you are hurting them as creatures. You are hurting them as spirits. And so I think that's a critical piece that we need to understand, is that whenever they tell the story of Thomas Jefferson, like in 5th grade when I had to write my report on Thomas Jefferson, and everything that I was able to read about, he was a Renaissance man. He was a lawyer. He was a scientist. He started the University of Virginia. He had Monticello. He was the 3rd president of the United States of America. So for many, many years, I viewed him as a hero. Yeah. But only later on to find out that he was a rapist and he was a pedophile and he was a slave owner. So I think it's detrimental not only to blacks, but to whites. Not in the same way. I mean, obviously, it's more detrimental to us than it is to them. But I do believe that it hurts them as well. And I think the key for white people that want to assist is that, man, you just got to be honest. You just got to be honest about what's going on. It hurts. It makes you feel bad about the things that have occurred. You feel guilty for the things that have occurred. You feel ashamed. But that's the only way that we can have a conversation about any kind of partnership. If white people are not willing to be honest about white supremacy, racism, then we could never work with them. And in fact, again, I'm not interested in a coalition right now because I don't believe that it would be one of sincerity. But if we are going to do that, the first thing that they have to do is just be honest. Just tell the truth about history, about contemporary times, and about how they really feel, what they were taught, what they do, and what's happening in our world. And I think that's the starting place. Up until the point that that happens, we have nothing to discuss.
Yeah.
You know what, Aaron? I also thought about something.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus never did get the approval of the Pharisees, did he? Okay.
Yeah. Come on here. Okay. I love it. I love it. Let me okay, I have to say this. I had a friend that just texted me and said, "Ooh, Sophia feisty." She sure is. She down for the cause, baby. Okay. Kes, you was about to say something. And I have one more question after this, but Kes, I'm gonna give it to you.
Yeah. I mean, you said, Quinon, you said, you know, it has an effect, and I will say the effect is legitimate. There is a mental problem that comes with hatred. When you pass down hatred, you're passing down a mental issue. I mean, it's not genetic, it's passed down. You're passing down a problem. You know what I mean? You're passing down a mental issue to where it's like, you know, everything is just when you hate something or when you hate someone, you never have peace. You never have peace no matter what you do. And when you're passing down these lies and you're passing down this fake history, you're passing down all these prejudices and all these, you know, racial slurs, and you're passing down all these things, you're teaching hatred. And there's an effect. And I think people don't even realize, like, you're damaging, like white supremacy it dangers everything in society. And I agree with you 100% about that, man. It's definitely not, like you said, it's not in the same way. It's definitely not in the same way, but it's more of a, you know, just a mental illness in the sense that you are, how do I put it, man? I'm trying to watch my, you're creating a major, I'm just going to say you're creating a major problem. You're passing down, and like I said, the effects of racism has created mental illness in every, you know me, every race. There's hatred there's no place for hatred. Yeah. And Jesus always, I mean, through his entire message, I mean, you read the Sermon on the Mount, like, I mean, you read when the Pharisees brought the woman out and he spoke up for her. And, you know, he always, that's why I have an issue with people that don't, look, I'm learning how to use something other than my voice. I want to support Black owned businesses. I want to get into the right avenue. I've never been into politics, but I want to learn politics so I can vote for Black people, not for myself, because the system's already has been established for me. I'm at that point. I don't want to do those things anymore. I want to vote for Black people. There's things that has to change, and these conversations are needed. Yeah. We got to have these conversations, you know, and like I said, we have to force the issue. But at the same time, if they don't want to hear it, if they don't want to learn, if they don't want to educate, if they don't want to put in the work, and if they don't want to do those things, it's a lost cause. And that's a hard issue to reach across the aisle when they're standing there like this, back turn. You know what I mean? Like that's why it's a hard issue. You can force the issue, but if someone is refusing to listen, just like the Pharisees, they refused to listen to Jesus the entire time, missed everything that he spoke. And that's the issue. And I'm done. I'm not.
No. Kes, I appreciate your thoughts. I really do. And to those that have been hanging on with us, listen, I'm full. I'm just so full with regard to what we've been discussing tonight, because I think that this is, as Kes said, it's so necessary. It's so necessary to have these conversations because, like I said earlier, I know that everyone is emotionally heightened right now, but I think that we need to start putting our minds together to think through some practical solutions to move us forward. Jarad, I thought you had something you wanted to say a little earlier. Was that it?
Oh, no, I was just going to say the point that Kes made about hate being passed down being a mental illness, I thought was extremely profound and something I certainly agree with. We have to be able to understand and connect the psychology behind supremacy and what the depravity really is. And I think it's kind of obvious now as we look at the person who is in the office as the president of the United States. That certainly that type of hate is a mental illness, but I just thought it was a profound point that Kez made about that very fact. So I just wanted to applaud that point. I certainly agree with it. And I appreciate, Kez, for your listening ear. There are so many white people that want to interject their points and talk about how they have been done wrong and how they have somehow not benefited from certain systems. So I do appreciate you listening and also not trying to also talk about how you may have experienced some level of oppression or marginalization at some point in your life because you didn't get the A that you wanted in third grade. So thank you for that.
So I'm going to do something, everybody. I have a line here. I want you guys to call into the show. And we're not going to, hold this into terms of perpetuity. But I want you, to those that have your thoughts and your opinions and want to kind of elucidate whatever your position is, I want you to call into the show. But I want to preface and kind of give some context to what I want you to answer. I know people have a myriad of thoughts and perspectives, but I think it's very important. And they're already calling, my God. Okay, I think it's very important for us to produce some solutions. I think it's very important for us to put our heads together to understand what is the game plan, what is the blueprint that's going to cause us to be effective right now. Because listen, the whole world is listening right now. I mean, like I said, you can look overseas and you can see, what's happening in Tokyo and what's happening in London. It is incredible to see how this movement has gained so much momentum. And so I think we're at a very pivotal moment right now. And we need to make our demands clear. We need to make those solutions known and heard so that we can all be on the same page concerning how to move us forward. So listen, everyone that is watching, I want you to call in. Well, not everybody, but if you have a perspective that you want to opine, I want you see that number on the screen, 832-753-1367. And while we're having people call in, I want those on the panel. Well, hold on. Let's get this first person because they are pretty persistent. Let's see what they have to say. Hello, caller. We want you to state your name, where you're calling from, and give us your opinion.
This is Mario from Houston, Texas.
Hey, Mario.
Hey, I'm calling. One of our solutions is we have to demand federal policy, laws, and legislation that hold police accountable for brutality. Until there are federal policies in place, there is not going to be change because we're going to be dependent on local law enforcement who show over and over that they don't have what it takes to get it done. Just like in the civil rights movement, it had to be federal mandate for voter rights and these other rights. It has to be a federal thing. I don't know if y'all noticed since we've been on, but the governor in Minneapolis took the case from the local DA and put it to the state attorney because they don't trust the local people to do what they need to do. We have to have an agenda, and I think Sophie mentioned money. We have to have money and people in position to get our agenda put on paper. It has to be federal policy and legislation.
Yeah.
That's my comment.
Thank you so much, Mario. I appreciate that. Any comments on that before I move on to the next caller? Okay, we'll take you. Hello, caller. Can you give us your name and where you're calling from, and give us your opinion?
All right, my name is Ellie. Well, I'm going to go by Ellie. My name is Ellie. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I was thinking the best way to not only gain wealth in generation, it will have to be not only buying the house, but buying the land it's on. Because as soon as you own the land, you own anything that will be built on it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that perspective. Thank you so much. So yes, any thoughts on that, Quinon? I thought you were going to say something earlier. Here you go.
I was. Just respect to the previous caller. I believe his name is Mario. He talked about federal policy being a necessity. The reality is we have federal laws in place and have had federal laws in place for over 100 years. I don't think we need any more laws. We have enough laws. You can't discriminate against people based on race. That's a law. We have a 14th Amendment that essentially codifies that there's equal protection within the laws. So it's never been a question of the laws. The issue has always been the enforcement of the laws and whether the Supreme Court would hear a case, or whether when they heard a case, they wouldn't attempt to use some ridiculous legal rationale to exclude the enforcement of federal rule. The thing is, the law is another piece of white supremacy. So because again, it is a piece of white supremacy, the purpose of it is to maintain white supremacy. So I work in the court system. I see these laws and I see exactly how they work. And to be quite honest with you, we got plenty. So it's not a matter of needing more laws. We just need for the individuals in charge to enforce them. My belief is that we need to destroy the whole system and institute one of justice. That's the solution. We've been in this country since before its inception. They brought us here in 1619 under bondage, although we had been here for eons before then because we transnavigated the world. But when they brought us here in 1619, the country was established in 1776. Then you have 1865, where we were emancipated from slavery. We're supposed to be free, right?
One second, Quinon. To the caller, 1 second. We'll bring you on in just a second, just a moment. Just be patient with us 1 second. Continue, Quinon.
No, I mean that's it. I said, brother.
You can go ahead, Quinon.
At the end of the day, another new law is not going to make a difference. Because we have seen this. We have seen the history of how laws are enforced in this country. And never, ever, ever have they been enforced in our favor as a collective.
You know, I actually want to add into that. I think you're absolutely right. Was that a caller? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Well, 1 second. Hello, caller. Can you give us your name and where you're calling from and give us your opinion?
This is Eric. Hey, Sophia. It's Eric in St. Louis, Missouri.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, what's up? I guess the video is like a little behind, but that's okay. Yeah, I've just been learning, just basically listening to everything. But I think early on, when we guys were talking, about I guess like it's I don't know. Gosh, my mind's a little blank right now. But
Eric, turn your volume down. Turn the volume down from the video.
Yeah, turn the volume down from the video, Eric. Okay.
Huh?
Turn the volume down from the video.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
I guess what questions do you have for me or my perspective, I guess, or ask me?
Well, I don't necessarily have any questions specifically for you. You called in, so I had thought that you had wanted to express some position.
Right, I said something early on in the comments. I think a lot of white people right now, I mean, they probably do want to support, and maybe they don't know how.
Okay.
Or it's kind of like some mixed feelings. Well, where did they start? Or it's a lot of like this kind of conversation, you know, learning the other side a little bit more. Of course, like the rioting and with the looting and stuff, it's hard to grasp that. And it's like, well, when we're seeing this on the media, when we're seeing this and like, you know, you're hearing that, you know, some of the rioting and looting may not be from the protesters. It's probably insiders and stuff like that that are instigating it more, so they're like defeating the cause of what the protesters are trying to get out.
Yeah.
So that part I get. And then, of course, like, you know, I think it's just like we hate to see that, you know, the buildings being burned down, or, you know, there are good cops out there, and of course maybe they're not speaking up like they should, or, you know, it's like it's kind of terrible to see, like, you know, I guess, you know, the cops that are probably out there on the front lines, you know, it's crazy that I guess they shouldn't be on the front lines, and they should be on the other side sticking up if they're for it, but yet they're doing their job. And it's kind of like, you know, you see those really powerful videos of like, you know, like a protester going up to a police officer and hugging them, and then they're hugging back, and it's like, you got that support, but yet you don't see all the other people when they're on the front lines and they're doing their job and stuff like that, you know, or they're throwing.
Can I say something?
You know, the
hey, Eric.
Yeah. Eric, thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we're going to get in a response to what you said. So I really appreciate that. So let's hear from Sophia. Let's see what she has to say. Thank you so much, Eric, for calling in.
Aaron. Eric, we went to school together. We went to elementary school together, and our birthdays on the same day. Eric, thank you so much. So Eric is a white young man, and he has a beautiful heart. And I think that what you're doing right now, like there are several people on my Facebook thread who are white, and I think this is the start. You listen, and then you do your own research. There are civil rights movements and civil rights organizations, should I say, in every city, at least metropolitan cities. Yeah. And so it is your job to look it up. It is your job to figure out where these spaces are meeting, and also form your own white space. Yeah. Like call friends, call family members and say, hey guys, can we just discuss this? Can we just how do you guys feel about this? Because as long as it's on your lips, it's alive, it's in your minds. And then eventually it should affect your vote. Eventually it should affect, like Kes said, how you spend your money and all of that. So I commend you for even calling in. That's a start.
Yes. My father just called, but okay, let's take this call. Hello, caller. Give us your name, where you're calling from, and give us a minute of a statement. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I was calling because I know we've talked about Black Lives Matter and the rebuttal to Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, but I've always thought to myself, if all lives matter, then why are not all communities outraged at what's going on?
Yeah.
Except only Black and brown. Me personally, I feel like as a community, I'm not really interested in begging for a seat at a table that I'm not wanted at.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to have our own infrastructure, recreate Black Wall Street again.
Yeah.
And have our own things, have our own economic growth, because we can't find solutions with other communities if our communities are still in disarray.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that statement. I appreciate that. We appreciate that.
I actually agree with him.
Yeah.
Like we need our own police force. We need to be like policing our own people. Here's the problem, and I hope I don't get in trouble. We have a lot of people who still want to assimilate. I mean, where are the celebrities right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are the people with the real money?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's basically it. I mean,
and I want to say this to the
Aaron, I had a quick thing too. I think it's interesting that the caller brought up Black Wall Street because on yesterday it was 99 years since a white mob went over to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Actually, the area is called Greenwood. I was there earlier this year, and there was a destruction of property that some would say was in the millions and millions of dollars. Even talking to some of the current residents there, they said that they had an airport.
Yeah.
These Black people had their own airport, in addition to the hospitals, law offices, schools, dentistries, just all types of businesses in that area. And now that area has actually been gentrified. There's a baseball park there, and there are some other institutions. Also, there's a university that has a campus there.
Yeah.
So I just think it's interesting when we talk about destruction of property. Everybody's concerned about Target. But see, you just need to look back to your history and understand the things that white supremacy has done to Black people in this country.
Yeah.
So when you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, when you look at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from, in 1985, when the mayor of Philadelphia ordered a bomb to be dropped on a residential neighborhood that was mostly occupied by Blacks. Those are the types of things that we've seen in our existence.
Yeah.
And as a young lady so eloquently stated, a young activist so eloquently stated the other day, we learned our tactics from you. This isn't something that we created.
Yeah.
We are responding in the way that you taught us.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much. So we just need to be really, if we want to be helpful, we just need to look at the track record.
Yeah.
In contract law, we call that past performance.
Yeah.
We just need to look at past performance so you can understand where we're coming from as a people.
I have a question.
Well, let me take this one call because this is a special guest, y'all. This is my father.
All right, Father.
And I got to bring the apostle, the prophet, the worldwide Episcopal bishop. We have to bring him on to this broadcast.
Come on,
And so,
Bishop. Come on, Bishop.
come on, Dad. Here you go.
Hey, good evening. How y'all doing? Son, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Okay. I'm going to say some things that I don't think are going to be really popular because I think that a lot of times we don't understand that there is a subconscious programming when it comes to how we respond to what is happening to us. Retaliation is not violence. Okay? When the people mistreat you and you respond to that in the same manner against them, that is not violence. That is prudent. It is wise for us to understand that we have a responsibility to protect ourselves. Whenever we allow people to continue to treat us this way, it shows that we don't love ourselves properly. And so that to me is something that we have to begin to understand, that they cannot deem our response to them as violence when we're merely doing what it takes to protect ourselves. You know, that's point one for me. I think another thing that I think we need to look at, and to me it's really, really, I don't know, our reaction's got to be tiered. And what I mean by tiered is, you know, I hear people talking about legislature. The brother said it right. We got enough laws, okay? They're not enforcing the laws we got, and the laws came from the same system that is oppressing us. So when we begin to understand that that's the case, there has to be an arm that begins to institute a reaction to what is happening toward us. And what I mean by that is there has to be some cost. Somebody has to not be afraid to die, and someone has to understand that we will retaliate against you when you perpetrate these type of crimes against us. I promise you that if they knew that something would happen to them like it happens to us, it would cease in a matter of months. But because they know that they can do this to us without any retaliation, it'll never stop. So if we and my last point is the good cop, bad cop argument. And I heard you all say, you know, maybe that's not relevant when it comes to what we understand about what's going on. We're missing the point of what happened with Mr. George Floyd. But here's the point. If we are of the understanding that there are good cops, and the reality of it is by the time a situation takes off, we 20 steps behind what the response needs to be. The Black community needs to be made aware that there are no good cops if everyone understands that what we call good cops are cops who are silent. Silence is violence. That's the reality. So I'm not going to take much more of your time. But I think that until we are not afraid to die, and we understand that there must be a response to this type of atrocity that is perpetuated against us, we're not really ready to have a conversation for real. And we listen to talking, but until we respond, we need to just shut it down. That's how I feel, son. Love you.
Love you too, Dad.
And that was good. That was good. I love that.
Listen, I get it honestly. I want y'all to understand something. I get it honestly. Listen, because, from the prophet himself.
When the fabric of the country and the operation that the country depends on is white supremacy, it doesn't matter how much legislation we have in place. As long as there are people in power to uphold that supremacy, none of that legislation is ever going to get properly enforced. And then to Quinon's point about Black Wall Street, what we see is that separation has never been the issue. It's thriving. It's a Black community that actually thrives and is able to uphold itself. That is what has never wanted to truly be seen. When you see a Black community that has thrived, you have seen violence enacted upon it. So it was never about separation. They talk about separate but equal. If things were separate and truly equal, I wonder what our country would look like right now.
Yeah. Wow. Listen, I'm going to take one more call. Sophia, I think, were you about to say something?
No, I just want to talk about resolution.
Oh,
so
yeah,
we can take the call. Later, after the call. I want to talk about what are we going to do?
Yeah. And then that's going to be my last question. Is resolution. And I think somebody earlier posted, I think a pretty detailed it must have been long. But let me take this. Let me take this one last call, and let's see what you have to say. And I'm having trouble working the technical side of things over here. Hello, caller. Give us your name, where you're calling from, and give us a minute of a statement.
Hi, my name's Chris. I'm calling from Virginia Beach. I'm actually Black and white. I had left a comment. I don't know if you guys are able to see it, but I'm calling with a perspective perspective where it's not so much, I guess, a solid solution, but kind of more of like a call to action and just like ideas. But something that I have noticed, I've been a part of the activism that involves the Black Lives Matter movement since 2015. And I've been trying to get heard for a really long time, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, but everything that's been going on has brought a lot of awareness to the Black Lives Matter movement, and more people are starting to see that this is seriously an issue. Like, there's a serious issue in America and the mistreatment of the Black community, and I think that the pressure that's being applied in terms of the protests, in terms of the media that we're putting on Facebook and all the other social media sites, like, it's starting to work. People's eyes are starting to open. You have protests where cops are starting to take kneels, and they're starting to be on our side. I think that more people are starting to see and like hear our voices, and I just think that the pressure just needs to keep being applied because there is no growth in a comfortable situation, and a lot of people, they're uncomfortable saying how they feel about this stuff, and they're worried about losing friends, but that's not the point. The point is we need change, and there's not going to be change unless we're not afraid to speak up.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that perspective. Thank you so much. This person has been calling and calling and calling. Stephanie, you've been trying to call in and the lines were tied up. This is the last phone call. Hey, Stephanie, give us your thoughts.
Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to make a good point. Some people have asked.
You may need to turn us down in the back. I think you may need to turn us down in the back.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Oh, that was the other call. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
That was me.
So I just wanted to make a point, and Brother Quinon, I believe it is, can help me with this. One thing we want to do that I've looked at is that everyone is asking to bring murder.
Yeah, I'm going through over here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Everyone's asking for first-degree murder, and I think it's important that we educate ourselves on the legal system and the laws and the statutes of Minneapolis. I've looked up first, second, and third-degree murder. The case does not fit the definition of first-degree murder because there has to be, I believe, some sort of premeditation or intent. And it's hard to prove a person's intent or what's in their heart. That's one of the reasons why it's hard to prove prejudice. It's oftentimes things that we know that are very real, kind of like breathing and air. You can't see it. So I think if we are not careful, and I looked at the third-degree definition and second-degree, it fits more of the second and third-degree definitions. But if we're not careful and we keep asking for first-degree, and they give us what we want, knowing that it doesn't fit the definition, this is one of the ways that people walk.
Yeah.
Give you what you want. You got to be careful what you ask for because you just may get it. Then whose fault is it? And we're saying, well, he walked. Well, it didn't fit the definition. We didn't educate ourselves on the laws and what actually needs to be, what the charge needs to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So
Yes.
that was just one of the points. I'm saying if we're looking for solutions, the first thing we need to do is to educate ourselves and don't just throw things out there without knowing what you're asking for.
Yeah.
I agree.
This is okay. I know I said the last call was the last call. This is the last call, y'all. Okay. I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Give us your name, where you're calling from, and a minute of a statement.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Adam. I'm calling from Tennessee. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what the gentleman that called in a little bit ago, I think his name was Mario,
Yes.
Had said, where he said that there needed to be more laws. I would agree with the gentleman in the bottom right corner of my screen who said that we don't need any more laws. What we need is an external organization that polices the police. The police have proven time and time again over decades that they are either incapable of or unwilling to prosecute police officers who have broken the law, whether that be speeding to a DUI or all the way through murder. There has to be accountability for every single one of those officers, and if the police office or the police departments across the United States are unwilling to hold their own accountable through their own internal means, there has to be an organization that there's oversight for that.
Regulation, yeah.
Because, yes, exactly. Because otherwise, they can continue to just walk around with the badge and pretend that they can do whatever they want, and there's practically zero repercussions. I mean, look at the amount of cases where police officers have either been acquitted of or walked away with a slap on the wrist versus cases where police officers have actually been charged and convicted and served serious time and actually paid some sort of a consequence for their actions. The The former is huge, and the latter is insignificant in comparison.
Yeah.
There has to be real accountability for each and every single person that is sworn to, quote, protect and serve communities. If you're not out there protecting and serving your communities, you are doing a disservice to the people who you have sworn that you are going to, quote, protect and serve for. And, it starts with holding government officials and the police accountable. And I think that's the majority of people that I've heard over the last 5 or 6 days every government official and every police chief has all said, we're trying to figure out how to clear the streets, and we're trying to figure out how to stop rioting and violence in our communities, and I have yet to hear any of them address the problem.
Yes.
The problem is not that there are people rioting and burning cities to the ground. The problem is that police are allowed to murder people in broad daylight on camera and has spent 5 days completely free without having any charges brought against them, and only when there was violence and cities were burning to the ground did they finally come around
4 days
and do the right thing.
4 days. Sad. Thank you so much for that perspective. Thank you so much. Listen, this is what we're going to do because we're over time, but this conversation is just incredible. This is what I'm going to do before we conclude. From each of our panelists, I'm going to ask, what do you think? And give me just a couple minutes of what you think are some solutions. Because this, to be very honest, probably deserves a part 2. I mean, I haven't even gotten to some of the other questions that we had on the agenda to address. But listen, we're going to start with Pastor Davis. What do you think are some real solutions that we can generate from this critical moment that we're experiencing right now globally?
So let me give you some solutions that I believe may be rooted in holiness. I think, for one, in order for us to truly see what it looks like to have some type of resolution in our communities, we have to really think about what it looks like to have a collective Black agenda. And my question around that is it possible? Because Blackness is not a monolith. It's a socially constructed color, and it's a culture, but it's so many different cultures. You have Blackness through African Americans, through Africans, through Jamaicans, through Trinidadians, through West Indies, Haitians. So it's difficult to have a collective Black agenda when there are so many divergent interests. But I wonder if there is something that we can agree upon to where we can come together. I think somebody mentioned it in the comments, but supporting Black businesses for as long as possible, banking at Black-owned banks instead of Bank of America and Wells Fargo, really looking at how we can truly invest in communities, not just invest in communities when white people want to return back to urban centers and build their coffee shops and their yoga studios, but actually invest in these communities and allow the people that have been there for years to benefit from that investment. So those are a few things that I believe can allow us to make some headway. But I ultimately believe that in order for us to truly see some reform, some change, the system of white supremacy has to be fully uprooted and getting rid of.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Pastor Davis. Thank you. So many nuggets to get from that. Thank you so much. Brother Austin, what do you think are some real solutions that need to manifest right now?
All right, Aaron. I'm going to go back to the financial side. That's the side that really touches my heart, and I think that we all can play a part. Whether it be home ownership, which when we're talking about home ownership, we're talking about buying land, homes, and not saying the Mac Mansion in the burbs. Go into the inner city. Go back. For me personally, I'm going back into my hometown, and we bought an old building, and we trying to revitalize the area. We're buying another property that we're going to invest in as well. But I think longer term, this is not a get rich quick thing, but it's something that if we focus our dollars over time, it will build wealth and build that generational wealth that I like to speak on. With that, we have to be involved in the community as far as education, the educational system. Being military, we moved around a lot, and having Black kids, The teachers would say that they were troublemakers. I made sure to play a part and tell the teachers that, hey, if Joe gets out of line, I'm going to get him. But if you get out of line, I'm going to get you. So we have to be able to hold our community leaders accountable, whether it's education, whether it's the police, whether it's other elected officials, and also go back to supporting Black-owned businesses. The contractor that I used for our building, he not only came in at 50% of the cost of our non-Black counterparts, but he saved me money, but he also was able to grow his own business, and he's doing another project for me right now. Very capable. So now I'm not selecting him because he looks like me. I'm selecting him because he knows what he's doing, and he calls me every day to tell me how we can save money. And he's doing the same thing. He's taking other people as well and bringing them up. That's what we have to do. To support others, and the legislature, I'll leave that to Quinon, but I really believe on the financial sense, if we build financial or a large amount of wealth, now we have a true voice. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take sacrifice. And guess what? I might not all the way get there, but whatever I get, whatever I build, I'm going to pass it on to my kids, and hopefully they can keep running with the cause and pass it on to their kids as well.
Thank you so much, Brother Austin. Thank you so much. I know that we can always get the financial perspective from you. You're one of my mentors in that area, and I appreciate you for that. Brother Quinon, what are the solutions from your perspective that we need to generate right here at this hour?
Firstly, I appreciate you, Brother Aaron. Thank you. I think that the show was done with excellence, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
I appreciate
also
that.
To my twin brother, Joe Austin. Me and Joe Austin were born within hours of one another so many decades ago. So that is in fact my twin brother. And Kes, I appreciate you. Miss Sophia, thank you. It's good to know that we got some people that are like-minded, even on the West Coast. I really appreciate you. And also to my brother, man, my brother Jarad. Just thank y'all, man. I really appreciate it. It was fun. The only thing I want to leave everyone with is this. We need to codify our strategy. We are very divisive and divided as a people. And as Jarad so eloquently stated, we're not a monolith. So it's going to be difficult there in trying to determine, like, what is Black? You know, what are we? Who are the ones that are actually doing the fighting? Who are the ones who are oppressed? I have some theories on that I won't go into right now. However, there is a group of people that receive that. So nevertheless, we need to have a codified strategy, a language. If you look to our 500-year open enemy, who has had warfare against us for 500 years, you will understand that they have a strategy, they have a code, they have a language. Some would even say they have a uniform. When I'm driving through the roads of Texas and I see a flag that's flying, wavering in the wind on the back of a pickup truck, I have an idea of what the ideology is of that individual. So they can identify one another by look, by language, by appearance. So we have to understand that until we unify there and having a codified strategy, and there have been codes that have been written about what we ought to do. I don't know if we know about those codes, but those codes have been written. You look to the Black Panther Party, they wrote a code. You look to Neely Fuller, one of our great educators, he wrote a code. So there are codes out there. Once we all subscribe to those codes and we start speaking the same languages and having the same ideologies and ignoring the ideologies that are put out there by white supremacy, then I think we'll begin to be able to put some strategies together. But until we get our minds together, then there's no action that's going to be effective.
Such great commentary as always, Brother Quinon. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for that perspective. Sophia, the militant prophetess, give us your perspective. Come on here.
Call me Deborah.
Come on here.
So I feel like those are great long-term strategies. Meanwhile, we're dying now. And so I feel like, as we all have agreed, the economy is where America responds. We need to boycott, y'all. I don't know if it needs to be Walmart. I don't know if it needs to be Target. I don't know what it needs to be. I don't know where we're spending our money the most, but I think that is the only way they are going to listen to us. It's almost as if we would be looting because nobody's going to be buying the stuff. So they're still getting a loss. I feel like there has to be some sort of boycott immediately. And it has to go on, not on one day, not for a month. We have to be willing to go the long haul as we strategize about taking that money that we're boycotting with and investing it in ourselves. We can do that. And I think we have to like start focusing on where we're going to aim first. I feel so like naive about where to begin, but I think that's a good strategy. And I also want to say, I'm so happy that Davis brought up, you know, all Black people are not the same. We have Caribbeans who don't even consider themselves Black, Africans who don't consider themselves Black. And I understand, because that's usually for American descendants of slavery. I get all of that. A lot of Black people do not understand that, though. The Black people, right? That we normally call Black people. And that's how you get Joe Biden saying things like, you ain't Black if you don't vote for me. Because what we do is we ridicule people who don't vote Democratic. We say you can't be invited to the cookout. And for the first time, I started to look at language that we say, that we speak, and started imagining what it would be if somebody else said that. It became problematic. So I think we also need to start thinking about the words that we speak, especially the body of Christ. And we say, oh, things ain't gonna ever change. I mean, these are small things that can make a big difference immediately. He gonna get off, stuff like that. We've got to start getting our minds ready for the battle ahead, because it's gonna be a battle.
I love it, Sophia. And in like fashion, you lived up to that militant label. I really appreciate you so much. I appreciate you, Sophia. I appreciate you. Kes, we want to hear from you. What's up, man? Tell us what's on your heart. What do you think are the solutions?
First off, man, I'm just thankful to be here. I'm just thankful to be able to be at the table and have these discussions. I've learned so much already, and I will put it to use. But I think I don't have much to say, because I'm on your side, but I came from the other side. So I don't have much to say of what Black people can do. But I do have something to say for what white people can do to make a change. There are people out there that have a heart for change. And I want to say, going forward, what you can do, and I'm talking to myself as well, is that start researching what companies are making money from the prison system. Start doing research for the history, the racist history of some of these companies. Start doing things like that to educate yourself to where are you putting your money. If you really care, everybody says like you care where your money's at. I mean, you put your money where your heart is. So I think it's important, and I'm talking to myself. I'm learning to invest in Black businesses, start to do research. I think those are small things that every white person can do. You don't have to, and then for me personally, like I said earlier, I've never been into politics, but I understand now is the time that I have to be, to be able to vote for Black people and not for me. Like I said earlier, it's not for us anymore. Yeah. It's not for us, and it never should have been. So let's going forward. Let's vote for Black people. Let's
can I
put
just?
Oh yeah,
I'm so
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to say, because I know it's about to cut off. All Black people are not for us. So please look at the policies.
Yeah.
Please look at the policies. I don't need people just to vote for me because I'm Black. We got Candace Owens, we got Ben Carson, we got Uncle Ruckus out here. So you got to be really careful. True. And nowadays, you got YouTube content, you got these trolls. They'll have a Black face. Y'all, we have to be discerning. We're not fighting flesh and blood. We have to look at these comments and say, what is this encouraging? Yeah. Who is this? Who is this for? Who's benefiting off of this comment? Just because the face looks like mine. Nowadays, they got deep fakes. They got video cameras that are altering images. And it literally fooling us into thinking somebody is saying something that they're not. We have to be so spirit-led now. So yes, Stan, if you ran, Kes, and you talking about liberating me with your white skin, I'm going to vote for you. Oh. That's just it. So that's what I'm saying. You don't have to just be Black people.
Yes. Can I just say this? Y'all, I'm full tonight. I'm full tonight in so many different aspects. What this podcast and what this show is becoming is exactly what I envisioned for it to be, to have some necessary conversations. And I believe tonight, all of those who have tuned in, I believe you've gotten something from this conversation. And I want you to continue these conversations around the dinner table. Talk to your people, talk to those that are across the aisle. We have to talk and get our message out. We have to put our minds together to understand how we can move forward, to understand what solutions are necessary and appropriate for this time, because the whole world is watching right now. And so let's think critically during this time. Let's think rationally, and let's be passionate. Let our voice be heard. Let's do the research to make ourselves aware, because to be very honest, I didn't know a lot of things in terms of my African-American history. I had to go back and look up some things and research to make myself aware of why some of these practices and laws were put in place. I didn't know until I looked it up where the police force came from. I had no clue. I thought the entire agenda from times of old was just to protect us, and it had nothing to do with us. I didn't know, and so sometimes, I don't want us to take our ignorance lightly right now. Sometimes we just say, well, I don't know, and we'll move past. No, open up a book, get online, Google, research, because sometimes it's that ignorance that's killing us. It's that ignorance that's causing us and subverting the effectiveness of our own strategy right now. And so we really, really, really have to research, do the work. Don't just be comfortable with not knowing. Ask questions. Research, investigate, discover. I mean, really, really, really go and do the dirty work to increase your understanding of how you can contribute to this cause. And so listen.
And real quick, Aaron, shout you out for convening this panel, for even wanting to discuss this issue. You came up with the title of this podcast before any of this blew up, so you were prophetic in that moment, but this was definitely a necessary conversation. So we appreciate you for putting this together and convening all of us for this phenomenal discussion tonight.
And I appreciate y'all. Listen, all of you are so highly esteemed, respected in your own right, established in your own right. And for you to take out time out of your day to contribute your perspective, I'm not just saying this because it's a formality what people say at the end of a conversation. We just thank you for participating. No, I really mean that. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for believing in the vision of this, to come on and open up your heart and express your view and share your perspective. This panel was phenomenal. This panel was phenomenal. I don't think I could have chosen better people to contribute to this conversation. So thank all of you. What I'm going to do is, to those that want to connect with this podcast, I'm going to go to, so you can support this podcast via Cash App at the # Deposit Aaron. We're going to be interviewing guests and doing some different things. And so if you want to support this podcast financially, you can give that at the $ Deposit Aaron, or you can do it PayPal, and my email address is also put up there. Also, you can follow me on all social media. Twitter is at Mr._Aaron Fuller. Instagram is Mr._Aaron Fuller. Facebook is Aaron Fuller the Artist. I don't know why that's an anomaly, but Aaron Fuller the Artist. And then YouTube, you can just look up Aaron Fuller and subscribe to my channel. So I'm going to ask my panel, where can they find you? Jarad, where can they find you? Where can people connect with you?
I'm on Facebook, on Jarad J Davis. Look up Jarad, Jarad J Davis on Facebook. On Instagram, I believe it's Jarad Davis 02. My name spelled out, Jarad Davis 02. And on Twitter, J Davis _101. JAY Davis _101.
Thanks so much, Jarad. Come on, brother Austin, where can people connect with you?
So on Facebook, easiest thing to do is look up Austin Luxury Realty Services, or my personal is Joe Austin II. On IG, I am flying.broker. So the word flying, period, and then broker.
Perfect. And y'all, just to put a little plug, Brother Austin was my realtor, y'all. He got me an incredible house, helped me get that. And so, y'all, listen, if you're looking for a house, and also, let me say this, I know to some people who, may be struggling with their finances and think I do not qualify at all. Now, I don't want to say that was my situation. That was not. But if that is your situation, I want to be clear. But if that is your situation, which I'm not at all trying to criticize it, but I'm just saying, don't just immediately exclude yourself and say, you know what, that's not for me. You will be surprised. You will be surprised. In home ownership, owning something, owning property, that's where it's at. It increases your net worth and so much more. So just look into that. If you are interested in the house, contact Brother Austin for that. He's a great resource for that. Okay, Brother Quinon, where can people connect with you?
Thank you, Brother Fuller. Just on Facebook, my name, Quinon Brooker. on Twitter and Instagram at QBLaw, QBLAW on Twitter and Instagram. If you have a legal question, go to my website, qb-law.com, qb-law.com. I'd be happy to talk to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Quinon. And to Sophia, where can people connect with you?
You all can connect with me on my website, sophiastevens.com. It's just Sophia's with a PH, not an F. Stevens with a PH, not a V. Okay. And then also, so sophiastevens.com, and all of my handles are on there. But I think that would be a great necessary conversation, home ownership, just FYI.
I love that. I love that so much. Kes, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I have a website as well, www.keslutzmusic.com. I'm on Facebook and just my name, Kes, Kes Lutz, Lutz. And I'm on Instagram at Kes Lutz Music, all spelled the same. And yeah, that's it.
Perfect. If you have not shared this broadcast, please hit that share button. I want to thank you, everybody that tuned in. You were great. You were a great audience. You gave some really great commentary. And so, like I said, we're going to be doing another conversation on this. May have a part 2, so stay tuned. Thanks to my guests. Thanks to the audience. It's been the episode 2 of Necessary Conversations. We will see you at the episode 3. We will see you on part 3. We don't know what the topic may be, but just stay tuned, okay? Necessary Conversations. I'm your host, Aaron Fuller. God bless you all.